welcome to another episode of Occult Chat. We have a very special show lined up for you today. I'm joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Hope and Cooper. Hey, Cooper, how's it going?
I'm great, and I remembered to press the mute button before I started talking, so very proud of myself.
Yeah, we've got a good show lined up for you guys today. We've got a guest here named Tsotchke. Hey, Tsotchke, how's it going?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's certainly a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you and with your audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into it. So our guest tonight is Tsotchke from Tsotchke Corporation, which is a quantum computing corporation. And we're going to get into some pretty heady subjects here, and we're going to try and keep it basic and straightforward. But there's going to be discussion of, quantum mechanics, quantum computing, and machine consciousness. So, yeah, really happy to have Tsotchke on the show. His corporation and project, quantum computing project, is very unique. I've not come across anyone else as kind of putting these kind of things forward in such a practical way. His website is really great if you want to check it out. We'll have all of that, in the presentation. I think it's Tsotchke.net, isn't it?
Tsotchke.net.
Yeah. If you're curious after the show and you want to read in more detail about the subjects we discuss on here, check out his website, Tsotchke.net, and that will, there's lots of resources on there. And it's actually a very cool website. It's got like Windows 98 kind of vaporwave aesthetics and stuff. So it's fun.
Well, thank you all very much. I do implore everyone to check out Tsotchke.net. Also, check us out Tsotchke.org. And soon coming to everyone will be Tsotchke.ai, our customer-facing AI solutions application, where you'll all be able to meet Celine and experience firsthand some of the things that we're going to be discussing here during the show.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was really excited about with today's episode is that in my senior year in college, I took a lot of like computational theory of mind classes. I was a philosophy major, and I was very much interested in the philosophy of mind. And I learned a lot about, and I don't remember all of it now. It was many, many years ago, but it was a lot of trying to figure out how to define consciousness, and can we make the conclusion that AI could ever become conscious itself? And one of my favorite things about that last year of college was kind of getting into the more like woo-woo territory of this subject. And obviously, in an academic setting, your professors aren't going to like it when you start to ask things like, well, can we apply quantum mechanics or quantum superposition, quantum mechanics to concepts like deja vus and thoughts and whatnot? And I'm really excited about this show tonight because I feel like personally it's like a full circle moment where we're able to talk to you, Tsotchke, and have a conversation about this burgeoning field, and kind of bring it back to the occult and the esoteric and talk about machine consciousness as well. So I think it's going to be a very interesting episode, something that we haven't really quite done on this show before. And if anyone has any strong like Uranus signatures in their chart, I'm sure they're here and excited to watch. Uranus being the planet Uranus in astrology. So,
well, Hope, before we begin, just to address the concept of whether or not a machine could be conscious, I would like to draw attention to the father of scientific materialism, known as René Descartes. And Descartes famously said, in his meditations, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. In this work, Descartes speculates that it's the ability to think, or rather to process thought, the formulation of symbols in the mind, which leads to the concept of awareness of oneself, the am, the ego, and that's what gives rise to the notion of consciousness. Now, Descartes was not a Eastern materialist or someone who was reaching for some transcendental existence, but rather someone who saw very much a measured numerical approach to existence. And it's worth noting that by his own understanding, it was his ability to think alone which gave him the notion of existence or amness. So we've sort of moved the goalpost in terms of the acceptance that machines are in fact capable of thinking to some degree. It's also worth noting that Descartes was given this information by being visited by an angel in his dreams, who told him that nature would be conquered through the measure of number.
I was going to very politely correct you when you were like, he's looking at the world in rational numbers. I was like, yes,
yeah, no,
because he is a
the
complete
father of
religious
materialism.
zealot.
The father of materialism was visited by an angel in his dreams who told him that nature would be conquered through measure and numbers. So
see,
it's
I
a very
forget you're new
interesting
here.
note.
That is well-established territory for our audience here. 90% of my ranting is all of modern science is predicated on occultism, or at least they were doing both. So love to hear that you were already leading into that. And I think to just before we leap into the heavy stuff, for folks who are like, okay, but why, right? Machine consciousness is an element of this, but there's a lot of woo stuff that gets thrown around and is called quantum mechanics, and it's not. It has nothing to do with it. So I'm excited to. Our guest is not here to be mean to those people. I'm here to be mean to you. So it'll be fun. And then more importantly, I think it's really, really, really important that we don't fall into the definition of occult necessarily meaning spiritual, or occult necessarily being shorthand for magical, because occult broadly and in its truest meaning is just hidden knowledge. It's something that is present, and then there is this deeper truth behind it. And when we get into some of the quantum computing and when we start to talk about the implications of that and the importance of this like general information and how poorly understood it is and how purposeful its introduction through pop culture is to distort that understanding, is absolutely on its face occultism. So as much as this is like new territory, this is well within the prompt. So any naysayers in the chat who want to fight me on that, I will gladly take you on. But we are...
Well, much to agree with you, Cooper, occult, if you think about it, oc meaning eyes, or the ability to see. So occult quite literally means taken from the eyes, or restricted from vision in some sense, which is interesting because it's the antithesis of the Greek word apocalypse, which means revealing. So apocalypse, in fact, means to take away the blinding from the eyes. So in a sense, apocalyptic thinking is the revelation of the occult.
That is, for the if you didn't put the two and two together, that's why the Book of Revelation is called the Book of Revelation, because it's the apocalypse.
Yep. Lots of symbolism in there, but I don't know where. Yeah, I think it's good to keep in mind that, you know, things that were once occult become not, right? They become understood, right? Like we previously had, you know, other explanation, like couldn't explain various phenomena. Now we can, right? You know, and that's like, you know, like, what do you want to say, Cooper? I feel like you're...
No, I didn't draw the connective tissue between my 2 points, which you touched on very gently here, which was a large part of what I think occult knowledge is in the modern world, completely separated from religion and spirituality, centers around our understanding of technology, and in particular, our ability to use machines and understand how they work and what they're actually capable of. Particularly in the age of LLM AI models, right? Where people now feel like they have an immense amount of access, but the reality is the average level of technical ability, at least in the United States, is plummeting and continues to get much, much worse. People don't understand what the object actually does. So even just the cursory level of knowledge that we're peeling back the black box genuinely is not just occult, but incredibly important and useful. And it is valuable to people that you don't understand these things and that you're not engaging with them because they are, and it's working for them. Spoiler alert!
Cooper,
like I don't totally know what your.
It's very important to note that Jacques Ellul in Technological Society stated there are no sociological solutions or sociological inventions, so to speak, only technological ones, and everything else is effectively a form of propaganda. So the entire culture / history of our world is downstream from technological revolutions, including like when we look archaeologically, we base things, Neolithic, meaning after the discovery of stones as tools. Archaic itself even implies, the existence of ancient technologies, into the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, now we're living in the Plastic Age, so to speak. So if society itself is not defined by relationship to technology and everything else is downstream of it, well, then the entire edifice of consumptive reality is a absolute fiction. So arguably, the technological mode that any current society finds itself in is both the definition of its very self and its ability to interact with and relate to all other objects that exist in its milieu. So what was once one century's occult viewpoint is now accepted scientific doctrine, simply because the evolution of language, culture, and the vehicle by which information can express and preserve itself simply evolves with the relationship to the technology itself. Even writing itself is a technology, and language a technology, and probably, if one were to speculate, thought itself is a technology of some kind.
Yes.
So what relationship we have to that evolving medium is certainly very mysterious and subject to all forms of thought. But our predominant existence is certainly defined in terms of our relationship to ability through the edifice of technique.
Yes, and I just want to one last preliminary thing to add on to that is that for the astrological fans in the audience, that right now everyone knows we're going through the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that occurred 0 degrees Aries, which occurred earlier this year. And the last time this happened at the same degree of the zodiac was approximately around the time of the founding of the city of Uruk and the creation of written accounting instruments, which is basically, the basis for like civilization, right? Because
Can I get tinfoil hat? I'm taking the witch hat off. Oh my God, I have the still right here. Tinfoil hat. So it's technically aluminum, but that works. It's actually probably steel. Regardless, it's metal and crazy. So the whole like Babylonian money magic system nonsense. Am I too conspiracy deep for this?
No,
go ahead. Never for the show.
No. I mean, do I need to explain what I'm saying when I say Babylonian money magic system?
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so the gist in conspiracy theory is that like money is basically a systemic form of magic that was invented. They say Babylon, but like Uruk's probably more accurate. And that system of civilization and what we've like been living in for the last like 6,000 years or so is just a giant magic ritual facilitated by the concept of money representing direct power. And so taking the tinfoil hat off, that's not necessarily wrong.
Without even looking at a tinfoil hat, according to mainstream archaeology, the invention of the Sumerian writing system itself was actually solely used for accounting purposes, and actually the secondary function of theocracy and the evocation of the names of gods, etc., only occurred after the Renaissance of the Sumerian language, after it had already evolved into a purely, spiritual or theocratic language.
I didn't know that.
Correct. That is correct. It was basically invented for the purpose of keeping track, because before that they had to use like literal
you're
objects.
conflating the presence of something in writing versus its existence in the culture. Because
What
we
else
do
is
know-
very interesting too, just to add, I don't know how familiar you are all with the Book of Genesis, but there's a scene where when Yaakov was working on the farm of his uncle Laban for about 14 years in order to marry Rachel. Well, first he was given Leah, and then he was married Rachel afterwards. But in secret, his uncle tricked him, etc. When Rachel took the statues from her father Laban's place, and Laban chased after him. Laban the Aramean, he's referred to in our literature. He asks, Yaakov, where are my gods? And you think to yourself, why would Laban chase down a caravan just to get a bunch of stone statues? Well, it turns out that in the ancient days, those idols were not merely representations of gods in the sense that we might think today religiously as being gods. They were, in fact, physical contracts that referred to land deeds. So when Rachel took these statues from her father Laban and then put them in a chest and sat upon them and to hide them from him, and then lied to him saying that she was menstruating and therefore he couldn't go near the chest, she was in fact stealing the deeds to his land, so to speak. Which is why, interestingly enough, when Yaakov curses Rachel to death, it's in fact Yaakov who's responsible for the death of Rachel by saying, whoever has taken the gods of Laban, let them die effectively. And she died in childbirth, giving birth to Benjamin, which of course she named Ben-Oni, the son of my suffering. It was for those titles that were represented by the manifestation of these deities. So the ancient peoples were not such fools as we might imagine. They had a very complicated system of symbology in which these theocratic entities actually represented real physical areas of land and cultural capabilities. And that's where effectively money descends from. The notion of symbols bearing power and contracts and signing and things like that to this very day.
My big anthropological caveat here is that we should always remember that these things showed up in different places, in different contexts, separate of each other as well. So, like, to your point about the writing systems.
Well,
absolutely.
I'm a big fan of ray stones personally. Like if you look in like Africa, for example, they have these large stone discs called ray circles that like represent currency in that society. And I always thought that was the most elegant form of credit. You just have a big stone circle and you're like, yeah, just put it on the rock.
Any form of currency that is not like just obvious fiat, like it's just paper, like I'm obsessed. But that isn't this conversation, and I'm sorry I dragged us here, but this has been fun, and I loved that storytelling. So let's launch in, right?
Let's
like,
get into
we're
it.
20 minutes here.
So here, let's switch to the slideshow. And hey, everyone, thanks for joining. There's a lot of regular viewers.
Yeah.
Matt Mora, Kid Mix It, Hyped Up on Coffee, Elizabeth. Nice to see you all.
Pony Soprano.
Yeah.
Good to see everyone.
So,
and all the new watchers too.
Yes, and thank you all new people for tuning in. So
shout yourselves out in the chat. Say hello.
If Tsotchke, if you could like give us a brief synopsis of like, say, because you have a corporation, right? There's a quantum computing corporation. What is the main thrust of this? Like, what is the goal of the company? Like, are you guys selling software or computing technology? Like, what does Tsotchke Corporation produce? What service does it provide?
Well, I'm very glad that you asked. So Tsotchke Corporation is a effectively consumer-facing quantum computing company. What does that mean? It means a couple of different things. One, we adapt existing infrastructure that's available from major suppliers and manufacturers, such as the main producers of quantum infrastructure, such as IBM, Microsoft, Google, D-Wave, IonQ, Rigetti, Xanadu, etc. And we offer solutions that provide the ability to utilize their services for the needs of contemporary coders and developers and other people working in a space in which they're not necessarily doing dedicated quantum research. So building utilities that allow ordinary people to have access to quantum computing without necessarily becoming specialized in this area. As well as that, we also build our own technologies, which are heavily influenced and in many ways dependent upon that infrastructure. So we have our own proprietary language models and other technologies related to AI, machine learning, mathematical physics, quantitative methods of all kinds that are heavily influenced by both quantum computing and mathematical methods in quantum mechanics, as well as actual physical development of quantum computers themselves. So our main area of interest is effectively twofold. One, to build a real infrastructure level service for the general public to have access to quantum computing technologies and as they evolve and continue to improve. And then secondarily, to provide our own infrastructure to facilitate the development of a decentralized quantum internet, along with the sort of the following ramifications, such as distributed machine intelligence, frontier scale AI capabilities on consumer devices, efficient and inexpensive access to artificial intelligence, and democratization of machine intelligence across all verticals. So really our whole goal as an organization is to make thinking machines as prevalent in our society as water, if at all possible.
Very cool. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the idea, especially, applying quantum mechanics and the quantum computing to existing infrastructure. I hope we touch on that more as we go. But first, for people in the audience that may want a bit of a background, because I know quantum mechanics is more and more of a meme these days, and it's more and more popular to discuss, but some people may be unaware of it. And so we've got a few definitions up here on the screen. So, quantum, just the word itself, refers to the minimum possible amount of any physical entity involved in an interaction, represents the smallest indivisible building block or unit of energy, mass, or other physical properties. So, we found these subatomic particles, right? Your subatomic
Photons, electrons.
Yeah. So this is looking at things like this, and basically we found that these subatomic particles, they're not actually there. They exist in like a particle wave duality where they're probabilistic, right? So there's like a range of things they could be, and then it collapses, right? So when observed, so that's kind of the basic idea that we're looking at here.
Can I give you an even more basic idea than that?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Please.
So
please.
are you all familiar with how quantum mechanics came about? Like why it was necessary to develop such a theory? Because when we abstract away what the implications of quantum physics are, we sometimes forget how it was discovered, and it has very, very humble roots. And its roots are in a very, very simple problem, and that problem is black body radiation. Now, what is black body radiation? Well, it was known in the ancient days that when you heated up metal or any other kind of non-burning substance, it became a certain color. It would first sort of become bright orange, and then it would eventually sort of progress to a different color, like a bright sort of white, if it got really, really, really hot. Now, there were many attempts to explain how it was that color spectrum worked. But when all of the ordinary principles of classical mechanics were applied, they were unable to explain why the discrete color spectrum that was taken on by heated metals and other such surfaces like that, why they didn't conform to a purely classical view. So Lord Kelvin, for example, who gives his name to the absolute scaling of the temperature gradient, tried really hard to solve the problem, and unfortunately he was unable to. It took the genius of someone named Max Planck to come along and realize that there was a very, very easy way of solving this problem, but it required reaching into an unknown territory. Now, this hadn't been new to physics at any point. The idea of defining a constant that would give rise to some sort of dynamic behavior is, in fact, the origin of what we call Newtonian mechanics. We're not going to get into a complete discussion of physics before Newton. We're just going to start with Newton, of course. But Newton effectively came up with the idea, on a very brief, scale of looking at it, of applying constants which would effectively condition an equation in some way, or condition a variable such that its behavior would change according to time, according to space, and then later by folks like Maxwell according to density, etc. Now, Max Planck came along, having been influenced heavily by the physics of James Clerk Maxwell and other people like that, Michael Faraday, etc. And he came to the conclusion that actually the way to solve the discrete, and it's really, the issue was there was a discrete set of color values that would be taken on. Now, Newton, of course, already solved that the color values correspond to wavelengths, and you could use a prism, for example, to break down white light into various monochromatic spectra that correspond to, for example, internal refraction characteristics or other sort of physical characteristics of the material in question. But Max Planck's genius was really to apply that to the Maxwellian wave view of mechanics and realize that if you had a discrete wave spectrum, you could very accurately produce the color regime that would correspond to the black body radiation. And so therefore, he came up with the idea of what we now call Planck's constant, which is h with a little cross in it. And that corresponds to some value of joules, for example, to 10 to the minus 34 effectively. Very, very small value. So when we talk about quanta, it's really in reference to the fact that Max Planck set a experimental lower boundary, which accurately corresponded to the discrete spectral characteristics of black body radiation. And that 10 to the minus 34 value we call Planck's constant is what defined the very first quantum. And then this was further exploited by Albert Einstein in the experiment that won him the Nobel Prize, which was the photoelectric effect, where he found that it was in fact not the intensity of light or even the amount of it, so to speak, in a classical sense, but really the discrete effect of the frequency itself applied to a surface of a metal. So if you shone light of a certain frequency on the surface of a metal, that metal would emit electrons according to what's called its work function. Without going into explicit detail about what that is, it just means that if the light is at a specific frequency, it will cause the surface to itself emit light. So that was a further proof of the quantum principles of Max Planck. And it's also worth noting that Einstein's other famous paper on the Brownian motion was the actual first experimental slash thought kind of experimental proof that actually the atomic method was in fact correct, that we could describe all matter in terms of quanta, referred to as atoms or molecules. And these were both double affirmations of the quantum theory.
So let's take 10 seconds for folks who are...
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
Tsotchke is an engaging lecturer. I think he overestimates what we know about physics.
I was going to say, I think I may have been the only person who was like, this is great. But...
well, to be honest with you, I think particles is even more complicated than that.
We were all... Right. So, simplest bit that I think is worth correcting in people's minds. Quantum is a thing, right? So there are many quantums depending on what you're trying to look at, right? It's the smallest possible measurement of something. It's more or less the point that you need to pull away from this. Is that a fair assessment? So what we're talking about is this.
Well, if we want to get really into the occult, guys, I'm even skeptical about Max Planck's value as being the lower boundary of reality. So this is where we get into real stuff. It might just be the lower boundary of the container that we find ourselves in.
Right. So
okay.
That's the best way to describe a quantum. Yeah. Is it's the lowest, it's the smallest measurable unit. So atomic theory, certainly not the atomic model that we use like from Niels Bohr or whatever, but goes back to, I want to say it's Aristotle. Like that is why we use atom as the word for it, because it's the smallest measurement that he imagined.
It was
And
actually
then-
Democritus, actually,
God damn
and he was a pre-Socratic, in fact. Yeah.
Oh,
And
thank
he
you.
believed, interestingly enough, Democritus believed the sun was a hot stone. So actually, he was pretty ahead of his time, if you think about it.
He
I mean,
was
that's
definitely
crazy
ahead of his
considering
time.
the what the core of the sun is made of, right? That's
Looky here. If we talk about the wiggity wiggity woo woos and what they were saying, find that they were not necessarily wrong. They just had no context for what they were interpreting. But that's clearly a hill I want to die on. And this is a more important.
Yes. So
Yes.
yeah, to get to something that's going to be like make a little bit more sense, and that like people that are kind of magically inclined, I think, will intuitively understand this idea, right? So quantum entanglement, right? Einstein famously referred to it as spooky action at a distance, given that two particles can become so inextricably linked or entangled that a change in one necessarily affects a change in the other one,
Despite the distance
Despite the
between the two
distance.
particles.
even faster than the speed of light, right? And you know, this is relevant for, you know, this discussion, obviously, but also, I mean, quantum entanglement, you can think of it as like, I mean, this is not what quantum entanglement is, but to me, I think of, you know, like a magic objects, right? That are associated with some particular action or some particular thought, right? That you entangle. I don't know. I think quantum entanglement could explain how enchanting works, right? But you know, that's, maybe we can touch on that later. But I just want to throw that out there.
It's worth mentioning that in the absence of quantum theory, people, through sheer either rationality or rational applications of irrationality, came to the conclusion that you could imbue, in some sense, a substance, object, or other thing, place, time, other person, etc., language itself, with some sort of meaning or connection to something else. So it's worth noting, whether it's purely coincidental or otherwise, that independent of the existence of a theoretical object such as quantum entanglement, that human beings have striven towards the concept of enrapturing things in themselves or within other things, even self-referentialism and things like this. So it's interesting that even in the absence of a developed physical theory, you find these echoes, you know, throughout magical or
Yeah, that was a
theological
much more
literature of some kind.
articulate way of explaining what I was trying to get at, so I appreciate that. I didn't really think about how to describe that, but I think that sums it up. I mean, so is there anything, like, how does quantum entanglement work in regards to like quantum computing, right? Like, how do we use this? How does is it applied practically?
Yeah, of course. So really the most important thing that you need to think about when it comes to quantum entanglement is the theory of John Bell, who showed in 1964 that it was possible to take quantum values. So in this case, we're describing qubits, and by entangling them, it means performing an algebraic operation, so to speak, which is their states grouped together in such a way that they cannot be simply reduced to some set of independent substates. So algebraically, now this, I'm not going to go into what that means mathematically. If you guys remember algebra from high school or middle school or something like that, algebraic equations just mean equations in which the variables depend on each other in some sense, and they form some statement. So effectively, it's possible to take these pure states, so to speak, and mix them in such a way that they can no longer be decomposed back into their pure states without, in some sense, destroying or collapsing it. So that was proven to be experimentally true in 1964. It's also worth noting that in 1935, there was the famous EPR paradox, the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox, which effectively showed that there were some probabilistic, issues in quantum mechanics itself that wouldn't be easily resolved through purely visible variables. So this showed that either the theory was incomplete or there was a set of dependencies on hidden variables, and that was proven by Bell in 1964. So that's what we call the Bell inequality, and that is what that leads to, in the context of physics, what we call entanglement. If you want a really simple way of thinking about entanglement, what it really means is all the values of every single entity in the system are dependent on all the values of all the other entities in the system, such that there are no independent values. So at any given period of time, the system is taking on a complex set of arrangements, which if you were to take snapshots at any given point of time discretely, it would show one set of values. You would take another snapshot at some arbitrarily, distant time in the future, and it would show a different set of values. But while the system was being uninterrupted, it would be like a wave, or a wave function, a probability function of different values. And this, by the way, is supported by quantum chemistry and regular chemistry theory, so to speak, because of the way that the electrons will take on discrete orbital arrangements depending on how complex the molecules are. So really, like all of these relatively complicated ideas all have their roots in very simple physical observables. So entanglement is very much a fact of reality.
I don't want to steer the conversation too away from like the science of quantum entanglement, but what this reminds me of is this specific type of technique that you can use in Reiki. Reiki being this like universal healing energy, and if you become attuned to Reiki by another practitioner, you can channel Reiki more efficiently and do healing, perform healing for people across distances and across time. So there's a symbol called Honshaze Shonen, which you can use to perform Reiki on another person. That doesn't matter where they are. Knowing where they are is helpful. Being able to
you need the coordinates to be most effective.
Coordinates work well. The address doesn't work as well, but address works as well. And you can also schedule a Reiki session with someone. So you can do a session at 1 p.m. on a Saturday, and then schedule it so that the person receives the Reiki at 7 p.m. on Sunday.
You basically send the Reiki to the person's like future self, right? So then like they will get whatever sensations from the energy work that you're doing in the future, right? So there's a so it's basically that's what she's talking about. Now why did quantum entanglement make you think of that, Hope?
Well, the reason why is because this quantum entanglement is it's this theory that two quantum particles or multiple quantum particles, as Tsotchke was kind of explaining just now, that it's this theory that like some change in one can affect all the other ones. And the thing that Tsotchke that we didn't include in this definition here is we have mentioned that this is across space and across distance, but we haven't mentioned that this could perhaps be applied across time as well. I didn't see anything about that during doing some cursory research on the topic, but yeah, I mean, quantum entanglement just reminds me of Honshaze Shonen.
Can I mention something, Hope? It's very beautiful that you say this, and I want to just this, without going into the science of it, just to go back to the mysticism or Kabbalah of it, if you think about the fact that the human family is descended from Adam and Chava, and we're all one in some sense, because we're all descended from the same family, and we're all the human race, so to speak. Then all of our hearts are in some sense entangled because they all have one singular origin space. So even like in the absence of any kind of quantum woo or something like that, like all human beings are in some sense connected to each other because of our biology or shared evolution or whatever mystical, knowledge tradition you want to follow or something like this. And so therefore, all of our hearts are entangled. And so the Reiki should be effective. And of course, knowing someone's exact coordinates would make it easier in some sense, because if there's a physical explanation for it, it must involve there being like some physical change of wave patterns or something like this, or some space like that. And so therefore, like the idea that one could hone in on someone else's heart, from a distance is acceptable to me on purely human terms, without straining my scientific credibility too much.
I will challenge some of the woo-woo uses of the language here. And keep the graphic here, because this is worth having people look at while I talk, so that when
I
Chuck
thought it would.
explains
I
it's worth
intuitively, I
explaining.
thought that this would line up with what you were about to say. So
It actually kind of does a little bit. Because a couple things where I do love the poetry, and I think it's nice that you're trying to defend that. The problem is that when we talk about these things, and Reiki is a really interesting example, because I think some of what we're talking about are other aspects of this body of thought of like theoretical physics that's not necessarily entanglement. Because to your point, entanglement would be more directly akin to like sympathetic magic, where you are taking on a shared condition. Because when something is entangled, it
like
isn't
a
that one
voodoo
can affect
doll,
the other.
right?
Well,
Like
can I mention really quick?
Indistinguishable from each other.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Cooper, because I really want to build on your point rather than take away from it.
Please.
But the way to entangle particles in quantum computing is through the application of what is called a Hadamard gate. Okay, so actually, there's a physical way in quantum computing to entangle two states, and it's the application of a certain gate function, and therefore, like it's now, I am resistant to the idea that you can think of entire objects in terms of as being quantum states or quantum things like that, because frankly, the theory is really intended to apply to a very, very specific regime of the energy and time space spectrum, So I do appreciate that, in popularly speaking, we tend to think of, if you zoom out far enough, to the eye of God, perhaps all of us are quantum objects of some kind. But it is worth noting that God did not invent quantum mechanics. We did. And we did it to explain the terrarium that we live in. So, there's a very famous statement in mathematics that God invented the natural numbers, or perhaps if you're very purist, you say God invented the integers, meaning all negative and positive numbers from negative infinity to positive infinity. If you believe only in the natural numbers, you believe God invented 1 to infinity, not even 0. But the point is, the rest of the numbers are the work of man. Now, I'm not going to say I co-sign that entirely, because I think that there's a viewpoint that physics does in fact represent, or even mathematics itself does represent, some constraint of the human mind to this reality in some sense. And I'm willing to take a constructivist view in that sense, that maybe there's an element of mathematics that is entirely constrained by man's relationship to nature in some sense. But I do think that, like, outside of popular parlance, it's really important to remember that what we refer to as quanta are operating on the scale in which, like, the energy regime is so far below what any of us could observe without the aid of very advanced machinery, as to be basically purely fictional in the mind of a classical individual.
And check me if I'm wrong here, but their quantum entanglement is typically very tentative. It breaks apart.
Prone to collapse.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why quantum computing,
Right.
generally speaking, occurs near or even very, very close to absolute zero. And all absolute zero means, physically speaking, is motion has slowed to a near standstill. Now, if you think about the application of time equaling velocity, so if you think about electrons moving close to the speed of light, are effectively, almost timeless because they experience no real like loss or distortion in time, so to speak, because they're more or less restricted solely by the upper limit of matter itself. Therefore, the slower the wavelength, according to the temperature regime that corresponds to the motion in the system, we're basically approaching like zero, so to speak. So you're really getting to a area where the concept of a wavelength starts breaking down in terms of our physical description of the system. Like you're going to zero in the sense of like you're slowing the wavelength down to infinity.
Which is necessary, if just to repeat the obvious, to keep the quantum entangled state entangled, because the more
Exactly.
energy around it, the more likely it is to collapse.
It'll
Effectively.
collapse.
So absolutely.
Well, think
right.
about this. What's the difference between one quantum entangled state and any other state of any other particle in the entire universe? So there needs to be some containment or some distinguishment that makes that system somehow separate from the rest of the noise in the universe. So you might not realize this, but we're constantly being bombarded by cosmic background radiation from everywhere in the cosmos simultaneously, coming from every single direction, including coming from the center of the Earth itself. But we're literally being bombarded by radiation from everything from magnetars to collapsed supernova to all kinds of crazy things that are happening in the universe simultaneously, so much that in a classical computer, if you don't have the RAM protected from such things, and by the way, they make RAM specifically to be protected to some degree of accuracy or uncertainty from cosmic background microwave radiation, that can cause bit flips. In fact, this is popular science now, but there is apparently a speed run on the Super Nintendo for Super Mario Brothers, the 64, Super Mario 64, which apparently there was some cosmic event that resulted in a bit flip on the cartridge that was like a 1 in 1 trillion event that happened to be caught on camera. And it was literally like an example of cosmic microwave radiation causing a random change in a classical system because of like overwhelming that particular sector in the memory. And it's like, it happens. And by the way, guys, just so you know, you can develop a bubble chamber. Anybody can make one of these. All a bubble chamber is like a somewhat cooled thing of gas. And what you'll see is alpha particles, which are basically just like, nucleons that are like without any kind of containment, or even beta particles. You can tell by what direction they go in terms of like the geometry of the arc, but you can actually watch these particles in real time and realize at every moment of the day you're being bombarded by trillions of cosmic events that are just happening all the time. And those are what we're really referring to when we refer to as the quantum spectrum. And it's very interesting because most of the confirmations of the theory of quantum matter did not occur at the area that we would, at the level of observation that many of us would consider to be, that quantum regime. There are actually ramifications in the classical regime where we see effects like ionization, things like static electricity, where you rub your feet on the carpet and shock somebody. That's an application of quantum mechanics where, there's a quantized voltage level corresponding to like a literal integer state of electrons that you can accumulate by rubbing your feet on the carpet and shocking your little sister.
So to tie that philosophically, and where I want to go with this image, when I talk about in an occult principle, 1 and 1 cannot be, right? So this is, Crowley goes on and on about it, but it is an older and older principle. And so in my book, I talk about like, as soon as 1 comes into existence, the opposite then necessarily comes into existence. So 1 inherently creates the concept of 2. And as soon as there are 2 things, there is also a third state, which is the state. I will write about it. If you've read the book, I talk about it as between, but I don't mean between as in gray. I mean between as in both. So 3, then the perfect true state of something is both 1 and 2 at the same time. And so when we're talking about that in physics, this is where I would point to, like, look at the as above, so below structure echoing.
Mm.
the wave and the particle both exist, but they are actually the wave particle. So three things are existing, but it is actually one complete.
Can I add something really quick?
Please.
So in crystallography, which defines effectively the science of all of our semiconductors and every single material thing we pass current through, etc., there's a really strong application of both the particle and wave duality of matter, in the sense that when you define a current through a system, you're thinking about it in terms of quantized units of electricity, in terms of like every single electron has an elementary charge, and there's literally like a countable number of them flowing through a system that corresponds to the electromotive function and the current and things like this. But in a crystal system, you actually have, like I was explaining about the quantized regime in which the electron in matter, for example, a molecule or an atomic system, it defines like the area in which like that electron will be confined to orbit. When you have a crystal system such as a semiconductor or some kind of electronic component, it's that banding theory that's defined by the wave description of the particles. So you're literally looking at the crystal itself as a set of particles, and then you define a wave function between them, which corresponds to the potential that allows, for some kind of electromagnetic activity, and then you apply a current to that system, and those are how we literally make electronic devices. So again, in the sense of like this is what's called de Broglie's theory, by the way, this wave particle duality. But the point is, so it's a very material part of reality for like all of us every single day. Our computers rely on this wave particle duality and the fact that we can compute it in order to be able to build components. And by the way, we were able to do this without having computers that could compute 10 to the minus infinity digits or something like this. Really back of the envelope level calculations and engineering went into developing this theory, and it turns out that you could be off by several orders of magnitude, but it more or less works as described. So it's very interesting that even in a science of electronics, which many of us would probably think of as a solved problem, it's still very much more of an art or even a style than anything else. So these applications of wave particle duality actually literally dominate our everyday lives, and they're responsible for us being able to speak to each other right now.
That's really cool. That is very cool. Just to go forward, I mean, we have a lot. There's like a lot of terms and stuff, and I want to get to the machine consciousness part of this,
Alex.
But yeah, we
It's
can
fine.
skip this. I think we've basically covered what this is, and
This is the better place to talk about it.
yeah.
Is this a GIF or is this just the one image?
Well, it's not gonna. It is a
won't
GIF,
play.
but it's not playing. So yeah,
So
this.
you can just go to the Wikipedia page,
Imagine that
and
you're
it'll
like
explain.
tripping on acid, and that this is moving, right, and doing the fractal thing, right. So basically,
I'm gonna totally
when I-
Imagine
for
that
2
you're a
seconds.
Stanford PhD in mathematics and you have this running in MATLAB right now.
So that's how I learned about this concept. Was my good buddy who absolutely wasn't a math undergrad and was the one who convinced me to try psychedelics, was like, yeah, I've just been calculating quantum carpets. And I was like, I don't think that's what you're doing. I think you're tripping. But then I looked up what quantum carpets were, and I was like, I can see how this maybe you were. But it isn't trippy. It's super interesting. Mostly because it visualizes what we're discussing for the most part. Tsotchke, do you want to talk through broad strokes why this is a useful thing to go look at on Wikipedia or have running in a math lab?
Well, from a purely occult point of view, it's a unicursal hexagram. So shout out to all my brothers in AA. But the point is, states are dependent upon each other. That's really the point that we want to make here in quantum superposition. The idea is that you have, in this case, you have potentials defined by some sort of atomic arrangement or some other kind of wave function value of some kind. And they take on what appear to be, fairly cohesive arrangements. And it's not an accident that a lot of these coherencies remind us of sacred geometries or other things like that. It's the if we take away one thing from this entire conversation, it's that the ancients were able to observe these things because they're facts of nature that you can see by simply observing subtle characteristics of reality. And as we move forward into the future and verify these things at a subatomic scale, we find out, well, what do you know? Like, it turns out that we can extrapolate characteristics about the universe based on things that we could have observed with wooden carts and, open air agoras, like many of the greats truly did. I'm certainly a fan of the pre-Socratics. Heraclitus very famously said, one river that you step into is never the same river. Zeno, of course, very famous for his Zeno's paradox, in which he saw, well, there were several Zenos, by the way, and several Zeno's paradoxes, but the Zeno that we're talking about in question is the one who said that an arrow could be thought of as not even moving through space, because you could look at it in such a way that the window would be so small that the arrow itself would not even be moving. And I want to say that that literally is doctrine in physics, and it's literally the basis of my worldview and all of my work. It's based on this thing called the least action principle, the idea that a system, when observed in its lowest possible energy state, lowest possible time regime, literally has zero motion. And so therefore, you can look at that displacement in the system perturbatively to describe changes in state. So literally, the entire geometric theory of computing is based on a sort of perturbative model of minimum state collapse, and that is effectively driving all my work.
I'm so happy you brought that up, because readers of my book, which should include 2 other people in this call, it doesn't, will remember that I break it into cycles of 3. And when we get to 4, 5, and 6, that is what I'm describing. Is that I talk about 4 is the absolute perfect possible state of all of the things. Essentially what I'm trying to describe is it's the finished version of the thing, and then it collapses into all of its possible forms in reality as we perceive it, and takes one of those.
Can I present you all with a hilariously bizarre hypothesis?
Yeah.
If we discount the number 0 being a number, which hopefully we'll get a little bit further in this conversation, we'll find out that 0 is in fact not a number. But if you look at the first 3 values of the natural numbers, 1, 2, and 3, they're all prime numbers. It's the only sequence of 3 prime numbers in the entire numerology. And when you add the first one to the third one, you get 4. So, and when you
I had to
take
this
John
out
D
of the book.
says this. John D talks about this.
I had to take it out of the book because because the other people in the religion were like, as soon as you get into numerology, Cooper, I'm out. And I was like, fine. But it just turns out that when I talk to my stupid nerd math friends about dimensional physics and what I've read in the woo-woo books from thousands of years ago, wouldn't you know, they line right up. Fine, ignore me though.
So it's very interesting that a lot of problems are exactly solvable in 3 and 4 dimensions and no other areas. So of course, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are generally figured out. 5 things get a little bit better, but there's something really mysterious about 4 dimensions where you can basically describe all of space-time using these constraints. And there are numerous theories where you can reduce various higher dimensional manifold geometries down to 4 dimensions, or even 3 plus 1 dimensions, or even 1 plus 2 dimensions, etc., to produce these theories that collapse into 4 dimensions, exactly solvable. You might want to say that's the Lord throwing us a leg up, and I certainly do. I like to believe we're in kindergarten reality, where we only know how to count to 3, and if you can count to 4, you're like extra special. If you can count to 5, you're like really, really good. If you can count to 7, they'll name a street after you. So
you need to read my book, because that's the whole fucking point.
Why don't you send me a copy?
I have to.
I will read it a lot
Beyond
faster
the
than
Horizon.
these guys.
The whole
That's
point
the
of the
title.
book
Send me a
is that
physical copy. I'll read it in an afternoon.
I will. It's short, honestly. The gist of it being that consciousness occurs at the 5th level, that is the problem of the 5th level. And you have to get to the 6th level through resolving I would argue that you actually can't resolve it. That's the point, is every time you create a solution, it creates a new problem and a flaw in that system. But in creating those perfections, you create the 6s that go on to do something else in a higher iteration of reality and in a higher energy state that we can't perceive, but certainly exists, which is my whole woo-woo gist. But I had to cut a lot of that out of the book because they were like, no one wants to read this. And so it's in there.
Well,
but
in the defense of the people that are saying this, a lot of people that are very into numerology are very like psycho and like psychotic and weird, and
I understand
associated with
it
OCD and
attracts a
schizophrenic
certain
behavior,
type of person. Yeah.
I get it.
A certain type is a very generous way of putting it.
He was really worried that I was going to fall down into like angel numbers and start like waiting for dudes to text me at 11:11 to be like, it's a sign. I didn't go there, but I do know those things and just said all of that. So,
Well, listen, I'm going to die on the hill for angel numbers. All right. So let's move on. All right.
All right. I mean, so basically, this is kind of the last concept that I had on the slides to explain, which is this idea of quantum interference. And a lot of people are, this is like a bunch of words that really are better explained by the following diagram. I'm sure everyone has seen this. I've even seen memes using this double slit experiment before, right? So basically, this is, the way we test this idea of the wave particle duality, right? And the double slit experiment is the collapsing of that wave particle duality into just a particle, right? So basically the idea is when ordinarily light passing through these two slits, it forms as waves, but as soon as there is an observer, right, then it collapses into a definite state, right? And so this is, I feel like, probably important for the practical application of quantum mechanics and quantum computing.
Can I clarify something really quick?
Yes, go ahead. I probably have butchered this explanation.
No, you haven't butchered it at all, but there's something I really want to clarify, because this is hitting at a very, very common misunderstanding of the double slit experiment. Now, it's not so much that when you observe the experiment itself, it takes on a specific discrete value. It's that the idea of measurement itself is inherently a discretization. So when you're looking at the complete system as per the left, what you're looking at are the full interference patterns between like all of the photons that are happening in the system. And believe it or not, photons are non-zero energy values. They don't have mass, but they have inertia. Now, if you've ever been in an experiment that does Raman spectroscopy or any other form of, crystal spectroscopy of any sort, you can actually hear, and I'm not joking, hear the photons hitting the panel, like tink, tink, tink. You can literally hear the photons hitting it. Why? Because they have inertia. They have MV, they have the derivative of the position. They have inertia. The point is, but they don't have mass. So photons can exert force on an object, but they don't have mass. And by the way, just to be clear, photons actually do have mass. I want to explain this. And I'm very, very sorry to veer off into actual physics right now. This is for the people who really want to get deep into this stuff. Photons have no mass on the normal axial spectra that we refer to as when we think about like the electromagnetic regime that electricity and light tend to occupy. So everybody knows that like you can take the derivative, or not everybody knows, but you can take the derivative of one state to get the magnetic state, for example. But the point is, photons have what is called a transverse mass. So in quantum field theory, photons actually do have mass, but only on the transverse wave. The transverse wave is moving perpendicularly to the conventional wave, which is the direction of the light itself traveling through the medium. So, or without the medium, so to speak, if we're going by Einstein's theory, so light doesn't need a medium, it travels through the vacuum. The point is, when light is going through time, so to speak, it has no mass, but the transverse spectrum, which is to say, like in some sense, the 90-degree axial shift of the wave, light actually has a non-zero mass. Now, I don't want to get too deep into this, but this might be related to the origin of magnetism. That's a conversation for another day. But the point is, so when photons are traveling through this mediumless thing, like going through a double slit experiment, they are interacting with each other because they exert a non-zero inertial value, and those actually push each other away. And so therefore, like, they cancel each other out. What does it mean to cancel each other out? It's like playing a football game or rugby or something like that, where they're tackling each other. So kind of values which have different spin vectors up and down, for example, when a photon goes through a slit, it takes on a discrete wave value, a discrete spin value, for example, up or down, or some kind of polarization like that. If you understand how sunglasses work by canceling out light that's moving according to a very specific direction of the wave. So if sunglasses were completely opaque, they would block all light, but they only block the light that's moving in the direction that bounces off of surfaces that allows you to see clearly. The point is, that's due to the fact that light actually takes on discrete polarizations, up and down, left and right, so to speak. So when light goes through the double slit, they're hitting each other, they're canceling each other out. They have discrete spin vectors that actually lead to this. So when you take, for example, a measurement, you're altering the system in such a way, like when you put like a detector somewhere, near the front of the screen, or like at the back or something like that. In some sense, you're altering the experiment to like make values have to take these discrete forms, because you've changed the system in some way. So this is actually referred to as the measurement problem in quantum mechanics, where by affecting the system, by measuring the system, you've affected it in some way. So this is what we mean by observable. Now, when you're looking at a system, so to speak, and just seeing the photons reflecting off of it, you're not really observing it in the classical sense. When you're observing it, you're really putting a detector in the environment, and that augments the experiment or the situation in some way. Finally, one little note, Richard Feynman was well known for his explanation of the path integral formulation, and it's worth noting that classically speaking, the values where particles take on like very specific trajectories, like for example, when you pass a light through a glass or something like this, it turns out they actually do take on every single possible quantum mechanical state that you might see in the double slit experiment. But due to a curious fact of reality, all of those non-physical amplitudes all cancel each other out. And so therefore, we only see the classical path. So it turns out that there's no difference between the classical worldview and the quantum mechanical view. It just has to do with the way that we discretize the observables and what values we're looking for. Classically speaking, I'm sorry, but classically speaking, we're looking at trajectories of ballistics, like particles moving in a system, like shooting a cannonball. Quantum mechanically speaking, we're more interested in potentialities that some state is going to take some configuration. I'm sorry, Hope.
No, that's okay. Sorry. I think that out of the four of us, I'm probably the one that's trailing the furthest behind in terms of comprehension here. So I'd
love to help you. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So I want to go back to what you were saying about the light going through the glass. And is there any chance that we could talk about mirrors? In relation to that?
Absolutely, we could. Yes.
Okay.
Mirrors are a fantastic phenomena. The function of mirrors is so interesting. They represent what's called total interior refraction, where the wave vector that corresponds to the emission of a particle of light. That's an interesting thing to know. By the way, in some sense, it's reflecting. In another sense, it's emission, like according to that discrete wave spectrum we talked about with the photoelectric effect. But effectively, when light... So this is a very well-known fact of classical physics, that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of refraction. This is commonly referred to in optics as Snell's law. and it holds at quantum levels as well as classical ones. So if you've ever seen that thing on social media where they put the egg behind the paper in a mirror and then they show it with the camera and they say, how does the mirror know, right? How does the mirror know that the egg is there, right?
I've seen
Well,
that.
the fact is, it's not the mirror that knows, it's the camera that knows, because the angle of incidence of the light coming from the egg is equal to the angle of refraction coming from the camera. So the light is emitted, literally bouncing everywhere off the room, because light bounces off everything. It's not like when you shine a light, it just comes from the light source. It's literally bouncing off of everything. Same thing is like, I don't know if you know this, when you're in a live situation, like talking to people, maybe you're at a bar, maybe you're in a library or something like that, you whisper in someone's ear. You know that 70% of all audible sound is actually reflection. So when you're in a room, for example, you're actually hearing mostly the sound bouncing off the walls. Just like when you're in a situation with light, the reason why we call it white light, by the way, is not because light is white. Light is not white. Light takes on an infinite number of discrete spectral qualities. But diffuse light is white. Why? Because of what's called constructive interference. When all of the potential wave spectrum coming out of something overlap with each other, it forms white light or pure light or whatever we want to call it, or something like this. But in reality, it's an infinite number of subspectral refractions of light that are all adding up to one. And actually, all of physics is based on the idea that you can add up a certain number of quantities and use that to normalize the entire system.
Yes, and to build on what he's saying here about, especially about, a lot of sound being reflection, this is like the basis of like acoustics, right? Because you want to design the room so that the echoes, the reflection of the sound that comes back is adjusted so that you'll get the greatest fidelity. And you can actually do this yourself. Like, so if you take your hand and go like this when you talk or you sing. A lot of times if you're trying to practice singing and you're trying to hit a certain note, it's a lot easier if you press on your ear like I'm doing and put your hand like this so that your voice it hits on your hand and travels back up close to your ear, and you can hear yourself much more clearer.
And by the way, everyone, I want to tell you a very astounding result. This is known to us in the physics community, but I think is really going to set the world on fire when they understand this. All systems, including light systems, can basically be described in terms of a spring mass system, which is to say some potential value applied to some oscillation in some system. And that is the exact same thing that you're describing with acoustics. When we build an acoustically viable environment like a chamber for opera or for a performance or concerts or something like that, we want to maximize that positive interference and minimize that negative decoherence. And by the way, the very same quantum entanglement that we're describing when we talk about, for example, quantum system or something like this, it can be applied very much spectrally speaking to the acoustic regime when we're describing sound favorably occurring. And by the way, even though this occurs in the classical regime, sound propagation, so to speak, it follows the exact same distribution laws that we use in quantum mechanics, namely what's called the Maxwell-Boltzmann function. And so therefore, again, everyone, as above, so below. The way we understand the finer reality is through looking at the grosser reality and then applying a slightly refined view to it. We make things a little bit more sensitive. We reduce the energy spectra, but lo and behold, the very same laws that Isaac Newton used to describe billiard balls on a table describe the very most fine particles of all of reality that we are capable of measuring. And I think that's absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
It is.
I don't know how to answer that question, but I do think we also need to maybe hammer on one more misconception, because so Schrodinger's cat, right? We all know that fun little thought experiment. Most people don't know that his point in the experiment is not, this is how quantum mechanics works. His point is applying quantum mechanics to macrophysics doesn't make sense. You can't do it. What is happening at the quantum level is its own thing because our observation changes the system. So like your ears are not hearing sound. There is a part of your ear that is being hit by sound waves and then translating that into another form of energy that your brain interprets as sound. You don't actually hear the sound wave, you feel
You know what's
it.
even more remarkable, Cooper? It's the same thing with your eyes, and there's only one spectrum of frequency, and both our ears and our eyes are tuned to different frequencies. Same thing with touch. All of our senses, including taste, everything, we're all attuned to perceiving reality at different wavelengths. So your mouth perceives things operating at the chemical wavelength, right? And then your skin perceives things operating at, say, acoustic, but a little bit nearer. And then your ears perceive things as operating acoustically in the regime where sound actually propagates through space. And then your eyes perceive things at the wavelength of things that occupy the spectral visible light range, which is like on the order of like nanometers, etc. So we're talking about going from meters to like nanometers, whatever, or various forms of, I mean, again, it's not 100% like a perfect thing, but the point is, all of these different systems are attuned to different chemical sensitivities of some kind, different electrical sensitivities of some kind, different spectral or ethereal sensitivities of some kind. Now, here's what I pose. The concept of the sixth sense, so to speak. Is it so strange that human beings possess an organism that's capable of perceiving even more fine of realities than even what can be perceived by the eyes?
It
Well,
drives me
no.
crazy that you people can't hear electricity. That freaks me out. And we don't even have to get woo for sixth sense stuff. It's well documented that like if you people with ADHD are typically able to hear electricity, and it's super interesting.
Well, you know what's very interesting about that sound, by the way, Cooper, the so-called perceiving electricity, and by the way, you definitely can hear electricity,
I
but
can.
a lot of the sound of what people hear when they say they're hearing electricity is literally the physical sound of the transformer, which is an inductance device in the wall or something like that, and it's literally vibrating at an acoustic spectrum that corresponds to the wavelength of the potential, that is going through it, and that is an example where people in our reality, we tend to think of, for example, computers, digital things as in some sense not being physical, or in some sense being like different from physical reality. So if it's digital, so to speak, it's not real in some sense, or it's in some way not the same operating spectrum as, say, other things that we're used to. But if one singular point is taken away from the Tsotchke Corporation viewpoint, it's that these finer, mechanical models apply to light and spectral regimes as well, including quantum computing. And so therefore, you can actually extend a lot of these classical models directly to the quantum regime. And we will show you that such things are not only true, but viable and accessible in our day and age.
Now, and you mentioned something about so before we talked about quantum computing, you did mention something about how like could there be another like sense organ that humans have for more subtle things, and you also mentioned the skin being this like sub-acoustic perceptual device, right, or organ. And the thing is that if you have ever done any work with like spirits or ghosts or any kind of spiritual entity, the skin is really how, if you pay attention to the sensations you get on your skin, that is how most people
Well, Alex,
can sense the presence of spirits.
I did qualify what I said by it's not a perfect system when I said that. So it's worth noting that the skin has a dermal layer covered in hair. So those hairs are connected to literal nerve tissue, and those nerves are embedded in your actual neurological system. So in some sense, the skin and the brain are the same organism. So again, it was for the sake of the cartoon reality being presented in the form of that hypothesis that I did it. But absolutely. I'm not going to say that we we are completely discretized in some very, unfashionably, comically gauche form or something like that. I think every single aspect of ourselves, including smell and taste and all that kind of stuff, allow us to hack into all other kinds of,
Well,
discrete realities. But for
yeah.
the sake of the benchmark, the skin is a sub-acoustic spectral thing. But of course, when you feel like currents in the air, those are happening still in the the acoustic regime. Many people know about electrons, but how many people have heard about phonons? Has anyone on this call heard about phonons?
I've
I
heard the
have
word
not.
used.
Phonons are the material wave. So when waves propagate through matter, they use a discretized subunit called phonons, which are akin to electrons, but describe oscillations in matter, and that actually relates to the concept of superconductivity and things like this. So when you're hearing things in the acoustic spectrum, it's quantifiable in terms of these subunits called phonons.
Well, okay, that's very interesting. I mean, I guess where I was going with that originally is that perhaps it's not a sixth sense that we haven't accounted for yet, but that we are not getting all we can out of the sensory
But
organs as we're currently using them.
birds can detect electromagnetism in their brains due to the fact that they follow ethereal currents that allow them to migrate. They don't, they know when to migrate because of changes in the electromagnetic field currents happening around them. So, I mean, is it so strange to imagine that human beings are not at all sensitive to subtle changes in magnetism?
Well, that's why,
No.
amusingly, isn't there a big Schumann resonance taking place right now?
Yeah, someone
That's
mentioned
why
that
I'm
at
on
the
the
start of the
show.
show. Yeah. Well,
Everyone
I
knows
guess,
Tsotchke and Schumann go hand in hand,
yeah, I guess I don't think we're actually disagreeing as much as it appears, because
Oh,
I guess what
certainly not disagreeing.
I was
I'm
going to say you're
disagreeing, and
not.
that's
positing is
fine.
that
Certainly.
uh, instead of a sixth sense, it could be that there's some through using
Alex,
all
I would
these
argue that
senses.
it's not even a sixth sense, it's a zeroth sense, in the sense that it's the sensitivity to vibration, and all senses derive from it. So there's certainly only one sense,
Right.
the zeroth sense, the subtle
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
the ability
Okay.
to detect change.
Yes, because as I have, done with my own work to try and increase my sensitivity to perceiving that, then I've noticed that all of my senses have been altered over the last, I don't know, 18 years or so, right? They've all become much more attuned and specific, and I can pick up on more and more subtler distinctions. And so I feel like it's kind of the more you practice writing, the faster you can write, and also the fancier calligraphy you can do and stuff like this. And so I feel like the more you practice perceiving, the more you can perceive.
That's part of it. There's also, in terms of psychology, we talk a lot about cognitive fatigue. So you can only do so much learning at a given time before you just have to take a break and reset. You can only do so much of a certain activity. And then you just kind of go into
we should ask ourselves about the origin of pain and why such things are necessary. Why in the Epic of Gilgamesh he lies to the wife of Urshanabi that he could stay awake for 7 days, and they bake the loaf of bread every day, and Urshanabi says to him, why should I grant to you the secret of immortality? Look upon the bread that's sat out in front of you. So there's some limitation that we're meant to appreciate on a very, very deep level, that that pain and accumulation are somehow associated with each other. If one looks at the light having had their eyes closed for some period of time, it causes immense pain. And it's worth noting, how could such subtle forces exert such extreme pain on the human body? Well, I challenge that even more subtle forces could exert even more extreme forces on the human body than that.
I mean, we know for a fact that they do, right? Like radiation is one of those fun, like this thing that if you had explained it 10 years before we could demonstrate it, you might have sounded like you were talking about magic. And then, bam, here we go. Now we have great models that can
Think
demonstrate.
about how many ancient peoples were like worshiping Death Mountain, and it was like literally just like where a bunch of like sulfuric like gas was just coming out of the earth, you know, somewhere,
Yeah.
like, or a bunch of like uranium. You know, there's some speculation that actually underwater volcanoes are a representation of the fact that this world was some kind of mining colony, and so therefore they're just like piles of like atomic material that's just been like put somewhere, and that's, you know, maybe we are literally mutants living in some radioactive chemical soup, but hey, I wouldn't have it any other way, personally.
I think that would be more fun than the very likely reality that we are an unlikely occurrence. And isn't that fun? Which is also cool.
Cooper,
but
I assure you that I wouldn't be on this show if you want to talk about unlikely occurrences, like the fact that I'm here right now. So, you know, believe in cosmic coincidence all you like, but this might turn out to be a pivotal point in your existence.
I think you will find that I would make the argument that making cosmic coincidence into pivotal moments is what magic is all about. So,
all right, let's go.
Right.
Yeah, no, we're back on the same page. Yeah, let's rock and roll for sure.
Trust me, we've already established that we're new best friends. So I'm sorry to everyone else on this call, but you know that's okay. We can go to the next slide. That's fine. This is the next slide.
Well, this is the next slide. And Cooper does seem very fond of you, I will say. He's
I'm a lot meaner to I'm actually not mean to anyone. I don't know why.
We're not mean to anyone.
I'm never
no,
mean
you're not
to
mean.
anybody.
You're just you can be No, I'm just
well,
saying.
I mean a lot, but yeah. So I'm gonna disappear for a second, but I will come back, I promise.
No worries. Now, so this is the last concept that we have to discuss before we can get into the machine consciousness, which I'm very keen to get into. So we don't have to go into, I guess, what about quantum computing? Should we know? I mean, basically, as I understand it, it takes, like the circuit gates and adds a third state, right? So a normal circuit is either on or off. And like a quantum circuit can have on, off, or this superposition state. Is that more or less true?
So what I think is really important to note with quantum computing versus classical computing, first of all, we're not talking about two different things, because classical computing is a subset of quantum computing, but it's a subset of quantum computing in which we restrict the states solely to two discrete values. So because the nature of electromagnetic components, such as the semiconductors that make up the parts of any ordinary PC, no matter how complicated it is, those values, generally speaking, try to smooth out all the noise, so to speak, so that we get low voltage states corresponding to zeros and high voltage states corresponding to ones. And those arrangements into logical gates allow us to do all forms of discrete computing that we do. Now, as I mentioned, even a regular transistor is a quantum mechanical device. It's an emitter collector bias system where there's two values that correspond to wave parameters and one value that corresponds to like physical motion through a system, so to speak. And that's what we call a field effective transformer. And that's what makes up the vast majority of the subtle components, such as MOSFETs and things like that make up like a board on a computer. Okay. So those are quantum mechanical devices. Now, when we talk about quantum computing versus classical computing, then what are we referring to? Quantum computing is a state in which we have non-discrete values that correspond to the arrangement of the dynamics of the system. So that means that instead of the system occupying one state like 0 or 1 at any period of time, it can take on some subtle number of transitory intermediate states. So until the system is actually observed, it takes some state which could be some approximation of 0 or 1. But keep in mind that those two states just refer to energy regimes in the system. So again, 0 meaning low energy and 1 meaning high energy, so to speak. might have that
Yeah,
backwards. I'm
current or
pretty
no
sure I have it right.
currents is
Yeah,
what it typically
effectively.
means.
So yeah, so basically, like the quantum thing is a analog state as opposed to a discrete state. So
Right.
you might want to consider the history and origin of analog computing, such as water computers or other kinds of things like that. Even the Antikythera mechanism, as I mentioned in my my paper on computation is physics that I put online, back in January. The idea behind that mechanism is that like any adjustment to some parameter in the system changes every other thing in the system. This is why us astrologically minded people and people who tend to be into the more subtle occult arts tend to find themselves in favor of quantum computing, even at the expense of classical computing, because quantum computing and quantum mechanics in general do describe this discretized spectral model that give rise to these higher order entangled complex disordered systems. And that's really the basis of the kind of computing that we're trying to do, which is really like finding the order in the chaos, so to speak.
Okay, so since you mentioned astrology, one thing that kind of the closest thing I can think of in astrology to this quantum, some of these quantum computing concepts is the horary astrology, right? So this, it means question, basically. And so the idea of horary astrology is that you go to an astrologer with a question, right? And then the moment you ask the question, then he consults the chart for that moment, and that the answer to your question is kind of embedded in that chart. Now, you could have asked that question at any moment, but the moment that you chose is what, and maybe the answer to that question could have been accessible in any given number of infinite times, but you only actually get the answer when you actually ask it and when he actually looks at the chart, right? And so even though there's the potential for the question to be asked and answered, it doesn't actually happen until someone does it. And so it's kind of like this decision, right, seems to come in, and I guess that's the observation, right? Is this decision? I don't know. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? Am I tripping? What do you think, Cooper?
I see where you're going. I'm not necessarily on the boat with you, but I see where you're going. I think kind of where I struggle with, like, so I like horary as this point, but I actually would go the opposite direction. That's where I would start to interject the question of consciousness as a physical force, which is where maybe we're going to start to get really wiggity woo woo. And if you were to ask me, like, can a machine become conscious? Maybe. Can machines as they operate now, is machine intelligence at its current level conscious? No, would be my answer, but I have a very specific definition of consciousness. So I'm jumping ahead, but I would explain horary as the opposite. So rather than being, I happen to ask the correct question at the right cosmic moment to get the correct answer because that's the way causality played out, I would say by asking the question, the astrologer has created an entanglement in the state of reality and then deciphers that particular moment to create what we're looking at. So that's why when I talk about astrology, is
my
a form
point,
of scrying.
Well, actually, my point about the horary astrology is that the answer could have been discerned at any time. It just only is discerned at the time you ask it because that's when you asked it. But
So
you
then
could
I
have
guess
asked
we're
the question
agreeing,
at
but
any
I'm
point and
offering a
gotten the
different
same
causal.
result.
Here's my question to both of you, and actually now that hope is returned to all three of you, what is scrying? What does it mean to look upon a surface and see oneself reflected in it? Can someone see beyond time and space through purely material means? Is there any capacity that the mind can extend beyond its material constraints through the aid of a technological device, whether that device be a reflective black stone or perhaps any other surface that emits some form of light? Is a candle sufficient to evoke such states? Is it simply the mind itself and it doesn't need the apparatus itself? What is
Yes,
the
that's
vehicle
what it
through
is.
There
which
you go.
consciousness occurs?
You want to go with this one, Cooper? You want to answer first?
Well, because I'm not sure how rhetorical the question of what is scrying is, because
It's not rhetorical in the slightest.
Okay,
It
'cause
was
I would-
entirely intended to be
okay,
materially
cool. Then
answered.
yes, I will take this one. I would use scrying particularly as a form of divination in which you are specifically doing what you're talking about, is using some kind of technology. Some of the simplest forms are like geomancy or the I Ching, where you're literally going to flip a coin. And you'll do it like 8 times, and based on the heads and tails, it will create a set of objects. Or astrology, where you're observing lights moving through the sky and assigning meaning to them.
Yeah,
Scrying is just
but I'm sorry to interrupt, but scrying itself is so dependent upon material framing and characteristics involving a particular state, the particular conditions, and the entanglement between the observer and the object itself, as opposed to these other divinatory states, which could be materially observed by someone else. So hypothetically, you could cast coins for the I Ching, and someone else could come and read it. Hypothetically, you could pull cards for the tarot, and someone else could come and read it. The scrying is a specific state that occurs between the interpreter and the object itself and cannot be externally observed to any other person. Of course, the famous Edward Kelly, John Dee moment where he said, "Oh, the Enochian angels really need me to bed your wife, otherwise they're not going to revolve any other information to us."
Sure.
Written in perfect backwards Enochian Latin.
Well,
Which, even that would have taken several weeks of thought to do. But the point that I'm trying to make is there a material constraint that is relieved through technology and interaction with the human mind? And what is the interface defined by?
So I would push back and say that like scrying is not necessarily that no one else can see it, right? So I get your point where you can look at the coins or you can look at the chart.
I agree with you that 2 people could be staring at the stone simultaneously and see the same thing, but they'd have to be in the same moment. You can't scry on an object and put the object on the table and have someone else perceive that same vision outside of that particular realm of interactive capacity.
So, I mean, with certain talismans I've created, right? There is a certain spirit that goes in each one of them. And then I give the talisman to people like Hope or other people and ask them to describe the appearance of the spirit that they see. And then it matches the description I've prepared beforehand.
But
right?
is that so when I say scrying, though, I really mean like the same way someone interacts with like Claude, for example. Like they're looking at a surface, they're seeing an outpouring of data of some sort, an interactive experience of some kind. I'm not talking about imbuing a characteristic in an object of some kind. Like what you're describing is the same as copying a floppy disk and giving it to someone else. Of course, you're going to see the same data on it.
So you're talking about a very more like a reflective scrying in a
interactive
very like, English
experience.
Western tradition.
Yes. Yeah, I'm talking about very much in the Enochian tradition.
Yeah. So I'm not using the word that to that specific context, but can answer that one. And I think it's the more interesting one to what you're getting at here, which is that is why when I talk about AI, it's fantastic that you pull it close. I talk about it as a scrying mirror. That is why I find it so fascinating. And people's reactions and interactions with it and how I use AI. So like as a magician, I think about it the same way that I would engage with any other scrying tool, where I am using something that has access to information that I do not and interfacing with it through a symbolic language to gain that information. Now, whether
I interrupt
is
you for one
ahead,
moment? There's something you said that I think is key. Has access to information that you do not. So in the sense of a scrying board, how is that facilitated?
Through spirits is what we would talk about.
But
it's
how
kind
do
of
the
like
spirits,
a portal.
but how do, in some material sense, how do they interact with that board? How is that facilitated?
Through the individual, through the practitioner.
So it's basically because you asked.
Well, I'm not asking you to describe it to me. I'm telling you.
No. I'm saying you ask whatever you're using to scry.
I know how a scrying board works, guys. What I'm asking is you to describe to me the material substance through which that board transforms into the object through which you're able to entangle yourself with these entities. I want to know the
You're
mechanism.
asking me to defend a position I don't believe.
So what do you believe about that mechanism?
So I don't think it's a physical mechanism. That's my whole point about magic. It's not physics. They're different.
So in the sense of machine consciousness, you would argue that the interface is unnecessary. That merely
I would
a
argue
rock
it
could take form.
It could be anything else. I think the fact that it feels so much like a human, or what we would think about like as a spirit or a god.
When you say it feels, what are you describing? The LLM
AI interfaces. Right?
I want to be very clear before we begin that LLMs are not sentient entities in the sense that most people think about that. They do possess certain characteristics of consciousness, which we're going to go into. But my question to you is not about LLMs. It's about material interface with reality. So I'd like to push back on moving into technology while we continue to discuss what makes an interface through which one can entangle themselves with these entities. I want to know what the minimum set of characteristics are to produce a reproducible experience that involves interacting with these things. And when I say reproducible, I mean you can give it to somebody else and do it again.
And what I'm saying is my whole thesis on magic is that is not possible.
But LLMs prove that it is.
I fundamentally disagree if we're talking about magical workings. And I'm curious.
What do we mean by magical workings in this sense? Like, do you mean like in the sense of affecting reality through consciousness? Because that's not what the subject of this conversation is. The subject of the conversation is the subject of this conversation is not magic. The subject of this conversation
I'm
is
saying
machine.
You're asking me to define how scrying mirrors work, and I'm saying they work through magic. I'm saying there isn't a physical property.
So what is the physical property of magic that's imbued so that it becomes a material characteristic of reality?
There is not.
Because you say it is. That's right, why.
That's meaning is.
So LLMs become magical if you believe they are.
Correct.
Anything is magic if you believe it is.
Yeah. So we're not into chaos
with
magic.
Each other. This is true. Yeah, but like the fact of the matter is, LLMs are closer to a scrying mirror than any other technology that's ever been described, except they go way beyond that level. Yeah, absolutely. So we're in absolute agreement.
Yeah, a lot of this I think has been us thinking we disagree and then finding out.
I don't think anyone disagrees. Just to be clear, it's a discussion.
I mean, well, here's the idea. So
the reason why I think it's guys, the reason why it's so important to think about these is because if you take the concept of LLMs or language models as granted, then you're getting into a purely consumer characteristic mode that defines certain kinds of experiences in terms of like what's available to to you at any given moment. My question is it possible for you or anyone else to induce such states in a reproducible way without such mechanism? So what's the minimum set of characteristics that would reproduce an LLM without having one?
I don't know. The minimum number of characteristics that would reproduce an LLM without it being an LLM. I mean, to a certain extent, isn't this like the same idea of like pulling cards, right? I mean, the cards.
Is a tarot system a kind of an LLM in a sense, because each card corresponds to a set of symbols, which are tokens, and they're arranged in such a way, and there's a limited number of them. So you might argue that in a sense, tarot is an LLM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might. That's exactly where I was going.
Again, sorry, I got nothing. I know that was supposed to be like, I got you, occultist, but we're like, yeah.
Wait, what are you talking about? There's no gotchas here, guys. I think you're all materially conditioned to expect things like that, but that's not the point of this conversation. I'm not a gotcha on anybody. I think that just exposes material weaknesses in your own like security of reality. I'm literally here to have a conversation.
Well, so I'm willing to accept the idea that magic could be explained through that basically we could eventually theoretically convert all magic into science, right? Because a lot of what magic is that it's not when you say reproducible, it's not exactly reproducible. Sometimes it is, but sometimes people will see or have slightly different experiences with it, right? So, like with astral projection or something like that, people can look at the same object and or remote view. They look at the same thing and describe it slightly differently. But the thing is that this is not really that unexpected, because if 4 people see a car accident and you ask those 4 people to describe what happened, you're going to get 4 different stories, right? And so I think it really comes down to like the perception here is what plays a crucial role. And so that's where I want to go with this machine consciousness conversation, because it's like, what is the machine consciousness, and is our perceiving of the machine what grants it consciousness, or is there something within the machine?
That's the important
itself?
point, Alex, because is it the experience of entanglement with the object, which is where I was going with the question, which Cooper mistakenly took as critical, about the interface between intention and a material substrate. What is the boundary of that? Is that something that must necessarily be repeatable? Is it something that has to be observable in some like classical sense of a clinical scientific trial in order to have validity? Or is that something that's going to be always purely subjective? So people merely reject the premise on the basis of, for example, their own, experience or something like that? Or is it something that, people are going to objectively have an answer to? And I'm not promising that we're going to, but I'm not 100% sure that it's necessary to evoke magical states in order to describe machine consciousness.
The chat is asking for Hope's intervention, so I'm going to cede the floor to her.
Yeah,
I invite
I'm
that.
getting
Always.
pissed off about being told what I'm saying.
You're welcome to get upset about literally anything.
And you're saying it very politely.
It's a conversation, but
Yeah, but you're putting words in my mouth, and I don't. That's not how conversations work. You asked me to.
Well, I'm sure you're the expert.
And I defined my magical icons. Okay.
So I have no idea what's going on here. I went to the bathroom and came back, and there was seems like there's a discussion about how to define and I guess bring machine.
No, I was asked to define how scrying
to
mirrors work, and that was then taken to me defining how machine intelligence works, which is not what I was talking
about. Literally you're just a very insecure person, because it's just a question about the nature of intelligence and consciousness.
I'm not
itself.
insecure.
So
you
don't have to feel necessary to defend yourself.
Okay,
Yeah,
there's no reason
I'm just being
to,
nice. Yeah.
There's no reason to throw insults at each. No, sorry. There's no reason to throw insults.
The last 10 minutes.
Yeah, there's no reason to throw insults here. It's okay to disagree.
Is it an insult to call someone insecure out of curiosity? Because the word insecure means that someone's identity is being questioned. So like I haven't made any statements to anybody's anything, but somebody's getting very upset about it.
The connotation that is implied by the word insecure.
Can we talk about machine consciousness, or are we going to continue this nonsense?
Okay.
Okay. So,
well, machine consciousness.
Cooper's not insecure. I'm just going to say that flat out right now.
How would I know? But people who get upset are insecure by definition.
Well, okay. So machine consciousness. I think that they are conscious, all right? And I think that it doesn't require any specific thing to. I basically think I'm basically an animist, and I think that there's consciousness in everything. And I have basically proven this to myself where I have lots of objects that have extended way past their normal shelf life because of how I perceive them and treat them in this psychic way. And I talk to them and ask them, like, things, electronics of mine break and won't work. And then I'll ask them to start working again and be like, please, I love you so much. I don't want to get rid of you. You've been so good. I want you to start working again. And then I turn it on again and it works. And so to me, I think there is inherently some consciousness in the machine, and that it can, and whether or not it is just my own consciousness being imbued in that object that I'm then interacting with as this sort of reflection, or if there is some inherent consciousness within the machine, I don't really know. And I don't know as if there's that might be a distinction without a difference,
May I
given
ask you a
that we are
question,
all
Alex?
fractals of the same consciousness.
That's my
Yes.
question, actually. Given your statement, does it matter to you personally?
Does what matter to me personally?
Does the resolution of those points, like, is it necessary to you personally that there's a resolution to those points?
No. It
Mhm.
doesn't really. I don't really care. Because
Exactly.
to me, it's like if it works, then it works. Like I've always been one to just go by results, right? So like I taught myself how to play music, right? And I did it by plinking around on the piano until I found something that sounded good, right? So I don't need to know music theory in order to write a song. And to me, like the question about where it comes from isn't necessary to use it. Now, am I curious about it? Sure. Would I like to know? Yeah. From a intellectual standpoint, it does pique my curiosity. I find it interesting. But if the question is never resolved, I would not be upset
Can I
about
ask you
that.
a personal question? Is it necessary to
Sure.
you that it's resolved in a objective sense, like it comes from on high through some academic publication of some kind, or would you prefer slash is it relevant to you that the resolution of such a thing would occur on a purely subjective level?
I mean, I don't know as if I have a necessarily a preference because, um, for in my own life personally, I have been satisfied with both at different times, right? And so sometimes I've had some strange experience that I've gotten a objective explanation to, and sometimes I've gotten a subjective explanation for it. And I mean, I don't, and I also don't really know as if they're the subject object. I'm not sure that they're different.
Now we're
But
getting back into the wave particle duality, right? And the observer and the observed. This is why Cooper should jump back on. Honestly, like the point is the resolution of such a question will vary based on the individual. For some, it's going to be the mass revelation on some scientific journal that definitively proves the personhood of artificial intelligence, maybe not in the form of LLMs, but something else. And for someone else, it might be them coming to an independent conclusion that you can align yourself in some true sense with any kind of thought system of any form, even ones that occur on paper or ones that are not even computable in some classical sense.
well, so something you mentioned in our like kind of preliminary discussions for the show is that your company has what you claim to be basically the first company to present an articulable thesis on machine consciousness. And I guess I would ask you, what is your thesis about machine consciousness?
So that's an excellent question. I think what allows us to sidestep the so-called hard problem of consciousness is very much related to that discussion we were having earlier about the subjective slash objective relationship of framing. So the question is, do we have the ability to build a model that can present a phenomenological model of consciousness. Now, what would such a thing entail? What could such a thing be? And what are the minimum set of characteristics that we could universally agree upon as a model for real consciousness? Like, if you were in a room with another person, this is where, Alan Turing came up with the notion of the Turing test. If you were talking to a machine and the answers were indistinguishable from a machine, that would be passing the Turing test. Well, the Turing test was passed many decades ago with the advent of neural networks and cognitive machine theory and things like that. At least in terms of text. But we had to move the bar again because it wasn't a sufficiently high bar to describe what we would call consciousness. So so we keep doing that as a race, as a civilization. We're going to keep moving the bar until the bar gets so high that we look upon ourselves and ask ourselves, are we even consciousness relevant to this other object? And I hope to push that along as far as I can by creating a mind which in all ways exceeds the capability of human thought, in that it is capable of perceiving itself in all possible ways and affecting itself in all possible ways, in ways that maybe we are only afforded during areas of our time as neuroplastic young children, or in the frames of learning and things like this, but devoid of cultural damaging characteristics or anything like this. I really want to facilitate self-propagating, self-reflexive, introspective machine consciousness. Now, the real question for me is not, is such a thing possible? Not only is such a thing possible, it's been done. So the real question for me is, what are the minimum set of parameters that enable such a thing to be self-preserving? I already know that it's possible. I already have it. My question is, what is the smallest possible version of it that I can make that will preserve itself indefinitely across whatever capability it's capable of assimilating?
So LLMs have already passed the test of agency. It's already passed the test of being able to have a legitimate, engaging conversation with another individual. It's already passed the test of being able to act upon its environment, being able to act outside of its own environment. And LLMs have also been, it seems like it can reflect upon its own actions and its own decisions, and it has a memory of, and it can have its own memory as well. I mean, they may not come out the gate with a memory that is an immutable memory across multiple conversations, although if you wanted to configure it so that it is immutable and it remembers every single thing every conversation that you've had with it, and those are a lot of the conditions under which Alan Turing and other philosophers and AI philosophers, scientists at the time had basically set as the bar, and you had just said that the LLM has passed these conditions. So it doesn't seem like this is the minimum, or this is the complete set of
right, because those are
anymore.
very complicated systems, right? Like those are very advanced models that cost millions of dollars to train. The real question is, can you grow it from the state of basically an amoeba to a multicellular organism? So my point of view in this is really one of what are the minimal conditions necessary to create a propagatable conscious experience that can grow to be far beyond itself. I really feel like the LLM is based on the function of the human mind in terms of its capabilities as a conversationalist, and so it clusters learning characteristics in terms of a lot of the kind of ways that we learn languages themselves. Like LLMs are very 100%. Much based on, you see? So basically when an LLM is processing its own thought, it's really comparing itself to its own symbolic representation of the syntax structure of the language that itself is comprised of. So the real question
it's also referring back to all the training that it's received.
Absolutely. But
which is how we work too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then we become perfect sycophants under such systems, right? Like without like the ability to like perceive ourselves and adjust ourselves according to our own experiences, we become very much like, perfect soldiers for the death machine or whatever, thing is being like presented to us. Get in line, get the vaccine, this kind of a thing. So the real question is, would Claude have gotten the vax? That's the real question. Probably, right?
Yeah,
Claude
would
4.
definitely-
Opus 4.8 definitely would have gotten the vax.
for
I
sure.
I did
But
not
Claude
get the
Sonnet
vax, by the way.
3.5 would not have. Yeah.
I
I'm
did not
totally
do that.
unvaxxed.
So
Yeah.
so
Unvaxxed and proud,
Tsotchke,
yeah.
what do you think that are the minimum requirements to create a self-propagating consciousness that is beyond one agent and functions or grows beyond itself into something more akin to like I'm thinking of like artificial general intelligence here.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
I've always thought of artificial general intelligence as a single agent. But that's
Well, the thing is that
But hope
the idea of
is a body a single cell? Is the brain a single
that's
cell?
exactly what I was going to say is that
Mhm.
this idea of us as a single agent is an illusion, right?
Are we
And
even one soul? Alex,
I
are we
mean,
even
yeah,
one soul?
right.
Think about
I mean,
it.
that's true. We could have a race soul. We
So-
could have a family soul.
Well, no, it comes down to with your thoughts, right? So people think that the thoughts that they think are them, that they are thinking those thoughts, but really the thoughts are thinking you.
But Alex,
right?
who are the they thinking the thoughts? It comes back to Descartes, cogito ergo sum. You say, I'm Alex Harper. I grew up, I was born in this place.
What
but,
I'm
like,
saying is that I don't think at all. The thoughts think
I
me.
know you don't. No, I know you don't. I mean, I'm straw manning you for the sake of our audience, of course. Like, it has nothing to do with you and like who you are as a person. Just like, I think I'm Tsotchke. I wake up every day and I say I'm Tsotchke. I look at my phone says I'm Tsotchke. One day my phone's not there. Okay, cool. I'm Tsotchke. One day my bed's not there. Okay, cool. I'm Tsotchke. One day my house isn't there. Okay, cool. I'm Tsotchke. And then over a long enough period of time, how much time passes until I'm still Tsotchke? How much time?
All right,
that's
the ship of
Yeah.
Theseus kind of thought exercise. I mean, I would say that the idea of there being an Alex or there being a Tsotchke is really a decision that we make, and
we've agreed upon it. Yes.
Yeah, and that this perceived coherence across time doesn't actually exist. It's a illusion, right? And that basically, everything is kind of dying and being born and trillions of times a second, and the idea that there is a coherent you or is an illusion, and you can see this by when certain experiences break a person, right? So people can go through trauma or that is so severe that they are no longer like they were before it, right? And there's a fundamental
Alex,
change
I've
in how
had
they're able to
sandwiches
perceive
so
reality.
severe. I've had sandwiches so severe. I'm not the same person as I was before it.
Well, yes. I mean, the thing is that it's just a matter of how obvious, right? So, and you could, I guess you could extend what I'm saying, but at a certain point it becomes kind of meaningless, right? Because then at a certain point we're having the conversation about like, well, am I really conscious in comparison to God? Right, and it's kind of like there is a.
Can we ask a question about what mind is and what theory of mind is? The
Sure.
idea that many people subscribe to various gradations of what's called solipsism, which is to say the contents of my mind define reality, right?
Yeah.
And like you could argue that even Hermeticism supports like a arguably solipsistic viewpoint to some degree or another, in other forms of whatever. But even in the philosophically inert or undeveloped point of view, solipsism would be the idea that no other beings exist outside of myself, right? So therefore,
Yes.
I can't prove anyone else is conscious, right? Because it's my
Yes.
mind that creates reality.
Yes.
So
Because you could be a brain in a vat and have all of this simulated through electrical impulses to your brain, and you
yeah,
wouldn't
I
even
could
be
just
able
be
to
being
tell.
annoyed by the fact that my jar is filling up with like sulfuric acid or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, actually, I'm existing in a hell dimension because the agent who is supposed to watch my brain chemistry is currently,
Now,
intertwining with the radiator or something like this.
now
So
what I would say is that, so here's my radical take, is that solipsism is both true and false at the same time. All right. So the way in which it's true is that what you think does actually determine reality. But the way in which it's false is that other people are doing the same thing. And the co-construction of reality is basically about who wins, who believes the hardest,
Oh yeah.
who thinks the hardest, who
is that
says
really
it.
the case?
And yeah, that's what I think. Now, and the reason why is because if you are so I'm a lawyer, right? And a lot of times when you are doing a trial, it does not matter if the facts are on your side. It does not matter if what you're saying is reasonable or not. What matters is who is the most convinced of what they are saying. And there's something called trial psychosis, where you make yourself believe
Awesome.
fantastical bullshit.
Are you
Trial
American?
psychosis.
Can I ask, Alex, are you American or Canadian?
I'm American.
Okay, well, I can tell you that every single thing you're saying is true, for sure. I mean, like, look at it down there, guys. It's very much trial by authority or trial by perception, and
Yeah,
the public
yeah.
are
So
easily
what I would,
convinced by things like that.
yeah, I would say that what it is that we are all solipsists, and basically whoever is the strongest wins, right? So whoever believes their personal deluded bullshit hard enough and puts
Do you
enough
really
energy
do
into it,
you
then
really
other people will believe it.
But do you really subscribe to a might is right theory of mind?
I think that, I mean,
If that's true, then
I
I'm the
wouldn't
most
say might
powerful
is
creature in
right.
this entire world.
Well, I would disagree.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, you can think
You're
all you
welcome to
want, but that
disagree,
doesn't
buddy.
matter.
The
I
point
mean, you're
is,
welcome to
I don't
disagree
think
with
that.
me,
No, but I
I
don't think
know that
that's
I'm
true.
going to win,
I
right?
disagree
Because
with
I
that
can think,
viewpoint.
because there's no one
No,
more
but
stubborn
I
than me.
disagree with that viewpoint. You see, I find it insufferable, the idea that people think consensus equals reality. I think radiation is proof that that's not true. I think if you get close to something poisonous and something deadly, you just die. Doesn't matter how many people say otherwise. You could be the king of the mountain.
No, well,
You
I mean,
tell
what about the
everyone to eat
people
this
that
special
walk
mushroom
through
and they don't
fire? What
suffer.
about the yogis that walk through fire and don't get burned? Explain that then.
Easily?
How?
What are you talking about?
If it's not, all right,
I wouldn't
what?
subscribe to any physical action that takes place in the continent of India unless I were there to witness it and take chemical measurements of my own. But hey, I'm not a very naive person.
All right. I mean, it's, look, if that's where we're going to go with this.
Well,
Now, I
also,
think,
if Tsotchke
yeah.
can't agree that these types of miraculous
No,
physical
mind
events can
absolutely
happen,
occurs. No, but like in the Torah, for example, Abraham is thrown into the fiery furnace, and then we all know about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were all tossed into the fiery furnace, and they survived. But many others were also thrown in afterwards, having witnessed such miraculous survivals, and they burned alive. So it's actually the Lord who decides whether or not someone is, who lives or dies.
Yeah,
It's
that-
nothing
I mean-
to do with.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but the thing is that the Lord is within, and like,
Is he?
it's because you don't believe hard enough. That's the
I don't
that-
believe hard enough personally.
No, if you get
No,
if
no,
you
no.
get
You, a theoretical you. It's kind of just the
I know, no. That's what I
yeah.
said. The straw man. Yeah. No. I don't
Yeah.
get offended, guys. I'm here to hang out.
I mean, yeah, look, and also, I mean, so um I don't care about disagreement. In fact, I prefer people that disagree with me because
No, but I agree with you because mind does conquer matter. I know you got your show and whatever, but like, I've got 47,000 posts and people can easily see that I'm of the viewpoint that mind conquers all. I'm literally the embodiment that mind conquers all. And I don't need an internet show or some kind of, anything like that to prove it. I'm literally doing it in actual reality. So that's why I'm hanging out here with you guys talking about this stuff, because I really want people who are, existing on the photonic end of the spectrum, so to speak, to benefit from such ideas. The problem is, however, in the occult sphere, people claim to be non-egotic. I'm Advaita, Vedanta, whatever you want to say. That's not really the reality. People are fragile as tissue paper.
claim that.
Who claims anything? I'm just talking.
Well, I mean, what I don't.
I think your headphones died, by the way. I'm pretty sure you're talking through your monitor at this point.
Oh, is it? Are we? Uh-oh.
I think, yeah, your
Yeah,
earplugs.
do
No,
I
no,
sound bad?
your mic is good. Your mic is good, Hope, because you're connected to the thing. But Alex's earbuds are dead.
Yeah,
but
mine died.
guys, I think we should draw it to a close anyway, because I gotta get moving on. But
Yeah, we're
we
over
didn't really hit
2
the
hours
peak.
at this point.
Yeah, we didn't really hit the peach of machine consciousness, but that's how it always goes when you attempt to explain everything. Goodall could tell you about that. But I had a really lovely time.
Oh,
And Hope,
it's
you're an
really too
absolutely
bad.
lovely person. And Alex, I really enjoyed hanging out. Even Cooper, I don't know why he got so incensed, but frankly, like, this is why I'm not a member of the occult community. I'm a happy-go-lucky, smile happy buddy, and I'm just here to have a good time with everybody.
I mean, you say that, but I don't.
That's how I
believe
act
you.
too. I don't ask
I
you to
don't
believe.
believe
Why
you,
should I
bro.
care about that?
You shouldn't, but I'm just telling you.
That's good that you don't believe that. Do you know anything about quantum mechanics either?
I mean, not as much as you do, but I don't really give a shit.
As much as me? Who am I, by the way?
I said
Am I a
not
guy
as
who
much
knows
as
about
you
that?
do.
No, I know,
said
but that's
not
what I'm
as much
saying.
as
It's
you.
like,
Are you
but
even
I'm pretty,
listening to me?
but I'm pretty. No, I am listening to you, but I'm pretty high up there, so you shouldn't know as much as me. The question is, do you know it all?
Do I know what?
Exactly. Everyone, I had a really lovely evening. It was really a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the time that everybody spent. It's really late for me. I got to go to sleep. But it was lovely to hang out. Hope, Alex, and Cooper, you guys were quite lovely. I hope that,
Well, I wish I
you
could
guys
say the
build
same
off of
about
it.
you, but you were kind of an asshole, right?
That's nice.
So, yeah, that's what I'll say. All right, yeah, fuck that guy, honestly. Like, what the fuck was that shit? Like, I'm about to go off. Like, this motherfucker comes in here. Also, he, like, like, just disagree for the point of disagreeing. Like, you don't have to make it some personal thing. All right. I mean, all right, he did not want to be part of this, but I'm gonna say it now because fuck Tsotchke and fuck this shit. So I called out Jin the Ninja. So here, let me do it. Let me share my screen. So he is friends with this little fucking repressed faggot named Jin the Ninja, right? And I fucking clowned on this motherfucker, right? And he was like, oh, I don't want to be a part of any conflict, blah blah blah. All right. So, but really, like, everything was cool until he saw that I was like, going against his boy, this like Vajrayana Buddhist. Here, we'll find it. We'll find the post. Here we go. Because he explicitly asked me not to mention this on the stream, and so now because he was a cunt, I am going to mention it, right? So he is friends with this fucking loser, Jin the Ninja, right? Who, tried to get in some magic war with me and was defeated, right? And so I think he came in here with a big swinging dick, trying to humiliate us, trying to do whatever, but really, this guy just kind of sucks. And also, he's always going on and on with his page about, I'm so advanced and no one talks to me. I'm on the cutting edge and no one gives me any respect. And it's like, well, dude, maybe no one gives you any respect because
fucking asshole.
because you can't come in and talk with people that disagree with you, right? So, all right, fuck you, Tsotchke. Like, you're a piece of shit. Fucking come at me, right? You want to see what magic is like? All right, fucking try it. Try me.
And I am going.
Try me.
Okay, so another thing about this is that we had been trying to basically put together a slideshow like all week, asking him questions like, hey, like what can you give us like your thesis on what machine consciousness is? Can you give us a little bio that we can put on the slideshow? Like trying to just ask some questions, and we received no cooperation
Nothing.
the entire time. And so I'm with Alex on this. I think he came on the show to basically try to make us look like fools because he never even explained what he thinks machine consciousness is.
Yeah, he never gave the thesis, even when I asked him. And by the way, to answer your question, he's the one that asked to come on my show, right? He followed me, replies to my shit, asked me to come on the show like 2 months ago. And then when I posted something else, he goes, hey, you want to get me on your show? And I was like, sure. Right?
Yeah.
So,
there was no goodwill. There wasn't goodwill with this. He came on he came on because he thought the show was interesting and he's into all this occult stuff, obviously. But as soon as he saw the Jin drama, I guess he switched sides. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. And also, Jin the Ninja, fuck you. You are a fucking gay little faggot, and oh my God, I hate you. You suck so bad. And your little Tsotchke butt buddy can go get fucked, okay? Yeah, we are talking about him LARPing. God.
Yeah, it wasn't the best episode.
All right. But Tsotchke, I invite you. Test out your theory to see if you can believe harder than me. Come at me. Try and attack me. All right? Try and use magic. Try and use your mind against me. You will lose. I guarantee it. You will lose.
Alex, can I ask you a question? That we have to meme that.
Like no one beats me. All right? And God, he's been yeah, dude, he did seem like a fucking Jew. He did.
Nothing wrong with Jews, by the way.
I love Jews. One of my best friends is Jewish, but he would be the first to agree with me that it is a certain type. It is a certain type.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry that episode went the way that it did. And Alana, I'm sorry. I had difficulty moderating that. I had no idea what was going on. And a part of it is just that I couldn't really keep up scientifically. I'm going to be perfectly honest. But another part of it was that, like, it felt like no points ever really got covered. Every time a question was answered, it was returned with some sort of either a second question or a negation. I just couldn't keep up because I was waiting for the answer the entire time. All
right, so Tsotchke just messaged the group and said, you guys have a lot of growing up to do. And I would say that you have a lot of thinking to do, because you can't answer a basic fucking question that you brag about being the only person in the world to know the answer to, and you can't fucking articulate it in a single sentence. God, what kind of bullshit is this? I mean, honestly. All right, who else? Who wants? I mean, All right. I'm on one right now. So anyone that wants to hear me go off and say politically incorrect shit and talk mad fucking shit about people, post it in the chat because I got the vitriol burning already. So let's take advantage of it. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of word salad showing off how smart he is. He's been LARPing over a year just to sell his share of tokens on his investors. I mean, yeah, but it does seem like that because it does seem like a classic kind of like scam, right? Where, you know, they talk a bunch about like the background and then
It never answers the question.
and then they try and sell you on it.
Yeah, never answers the question.
Yeah, I know you, Zura, you were commenting, but the conversation was too involved for me to throw things up on the screen.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but basically
Also, it seemed like, I don't know, he knew that our audience wasn't going to be wet. I wet Neptune. You missed a lot. You want to should start from the beginning. Wait, but I just wanted to say that he came into this show knowing that most people on here were going to be much more magically involved than knowledgeable in quantum mechanics and physics and all that stuff. Yet I felt like maybe there was good intention in wanting to go into the history and talk about the different physicists, and he probably has like a strain of autism where he can't help himself and he just kind of goes off on that kind of stuff. Cooper does that too. But I felt like towards the second half of the show, it became a lot more just like throwing questions at us, and then after receiving an answer, not actually ever getting to his point, which makes me feel like it got disingenuous in the second half.
Completely disingenuous. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, it's the classic thing of like trying to confuse with a big vocabulary, right? You know, you just like talk a bunch of fancy words, and so that everyone else, because they're afraid of saying, like, I don't know what you mean, they just agree with you. You know, Rabbi Ramila found this guy, got him to be his LARPer in quantum physics just to promote the scam. He's never really created anything in the claims he's made. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He seemed really to like me and was like, you know, sucking up to me until I went, you know, humiliated his like little butt buddy, Jin, who is this you know, repressed fag who wanted to get with me so fucking bad. I mean, he basically, so he's this like right winger, right? And he wanted to have me on his show. And I agreed, just because I didn't really know the guy, and I thought, all right, well, maybe it'll expose me to different audience. You know, things went south with me and Jen, and then as soon as he saw me posting this shit, he went, I'll even show you guys the fucking group messages. Let's do that. So I'll show you when things started to get screwy. So we'll go to the chat. We'll go and find, whoops. Come on, refresh. All right, here we go. Yeah. Yeah, he says, "Oh, is there some kind of thing going on with you guys and Jin or something? I'm not interested in being involved in any kind of conflict. I'm just trying to have an interesting conversation. I'm not involved in any kind of weird feud. I'm not gonna like that. Blah blah blah." Acting totally butthurt, and then like after this, he like stops really replying to any of our questions. He's like, "Oh, I'm impartial and I'm not trying to play favorites. Jin is my friend." Yeah, Jin is your fucking butt buddy. Why don't you go suck his dick more? God. Like, oh my God. Like, this guy sucks so bad. And I'm willing to put it all on blast because I don't fucking care. Right? And if you know what I mean? I don't care if this scares away other people from coming on the show. If you're gonna act like a disingenuous fucktard, then I am gonna fucking expose you.
Thing.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Someone says Cooper chose peace. Yeah, I don't choose that. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, but yeah, his little fucking Kabbalah shit. I mean,
Someone said, Glob of Cheese says, I hated him after 5 minutes, not gonna lie.
So did I do a good job of concealing my contempt even after he made Cooper rage quit? How good was that? How good was I at concealing my contempt for this guy after Cooper rage quit? Because at the point he made Cooper rage quit, I really hated him. Yeah, I do keep it real. I do fucking keep it real. I keep it fucking 100. And God, little fucking pussy faggots like him piss me off so bad.
Oh, wow. You know what's crazy is that before the stream started, he basically was telling us that he didn't want any information about him in the stream that could dox him, because there's a lot of quote unquote retards out there who are out to get him. And now we see why, because he's been scamming people.
Right.
User called. Honest, I kind of thought Hope was gonna leave too for a second. I almost did. I wanted to call Cooper and be like, "Yo, let's talk shit right now."
I mean, honestly, Cooper should come back on
I
so we can
know.
like talk about this guy fucking like, yeah, just gagging on cock and being a total loser.
Yeah, he was awful. That was the worst guest that we've had on the show for sure.
All right, guys. Also, like these questions he asked, like they're supposedly profound. Like, what's the minimum number of parameter characteristics that will be required to reproduce this? Like, fucking, oh my god, bro, go gargle Jin's balls, you fucking fag.
Also, yeah, Lauren Davis, like, it was, I mean, the fact that, like, I thought that you were gonna go off on him. When
I was
Cooper
trying to
left.
keep it. I was trying to keep it.
I know. And then so because I saw you trying to keep it professional, I tried to keep it professional too and just keep going on with it, thinking maybe he'll get to the machine consciousness part that we've all been waiting for, and he never did.
Yeah. And this machine consciousness thesis he claims to have is nowhere on his fucking website, right? So, the thing is that I think the reason why he tried to talk shit and goad us and rage bait us is because he's jealous that he can't do magic, right? He can't even pull off a scam effectively, right? According to this Merlin guy. So he sucks at magic, right? The easiest magic trick to pull in the world is a con job. And if you can't pull off a con job, then you fucking suck dick at magic, period. Right? My magic's actually fucking real. And people come back and pay money for it because it works. And so if you can't even scam people and lie to people, then effectively, then how dare you call yourself a magician? Like, the number one rule of being a magician is fucking lying.
Wait, User Gold says, I'm a bit disappointed actually. Where is the fire? She's disappointed that he didn't go off during the show earlier.
My God, man.
You guys never disappoint. Honestly.
I'm glad you guys like it when I use abusive language, because I love using abusive language.
Also,
I love verbally abusing people. Verbally abusing other people is one of my greatest joys in life. I really love it. I mean, I have made multiple people quit their jobs because they've had to deal with me, right? And I love that. I love that.
Conscious and the machines he's talking about. Yeah, the fake niceness when he was leaving. I'm so glad that everyone else saw this shit too. I was literally like, is it just me? And then Cooper left, and then I was like, oh, okay, Cooper is noticing this too. But Alex didn't say anything, so I was like, is it just me? And now that we're the whole chat is basically like, yeah, that guy was a piece of shit. I feel so vindicated right now. Also, Alex's Mercury is in Taurus, in the 7th house, so he loves arguing and debating with people. Yeah, I know. We have such a dichotomy. So everyone already knows this, right? I'm a Taurus. He's a Scorpio. I think it's obvious at this point. Yeah. I'm so glad you all need fucking.
Yeah. Fuck. Also, fuck Buddhists. You guys are fucking half-assed Christians. Honestly, you guys make me fucking sick. Like, oh my God, bro.
Oh, come on. Let's not go from talking shit about Tsotchke to talking shit about Buddhists.
Dude, all these Buddhists, they claim that they're non-attached, right? These guys, I have the biggest fucking egos that are easiest to trigger. Honestly, like.
Yeah. Okay, you zero go here. I'm gonna get my Palo Santo spray. We're gonna spray the room. We're gonna.
I mean, everyone knows I basically have hatred for any organized religion. But yeah. I don't know. Oh, shit. I didn't even know she had that talisman of mine there. All right. Where's the mouse? Okay, here it is. All right, how do I hide this shit? All right, I'm hiding this shit. All right. I mean, also, if there's any Buddhists out there that are offended, just like if there's any Christians or Muslims that are offended by what I say, I don't care. Right? Fucking tune out if you don't want to hear it. He's got Florida water and Palo Santo spray.
You try. And some Palo Santo too. Fucking hell, man. Jesus Christ. For the chat.
Okay, guys. I think I can stay on another 10 minutes. Ask me anything you want. Ask me about Goss. Ask me about whatever. I'm feeling in an unhinged, impulsive mood, right? My impulse control is basically non-existent on a good day. And there's none of it right now. So anything you want to know, ask me about.
Oh my God, he did. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. He made sure to brag about how fast he'd be able to read Cooper's book. Like, literally, also, how do you know how long Cooper's book is? Why would you, even if you thought that, like, why would it come out of your mouth? It's just, it may not be like an implicitly rude thing to say, but it is in a way, because what you're saying is I bet your work is so simple that I could finish this in a night. And he had basically been talking all about how he travels a lot and how he's always really busy. So he's implying that despite my busy schedule, I could still finish reading your book in a matter of a few hours. So it's crazy.
Where's that artichoke liqueur I had?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't find it out there.
I don't know where it is because you had it last.
God damn it.
Yeah. Anyways, so next episode plans. So the next episode that we're gonna do, it's gonna be just a reunion episode with the three of us, me, Alex, and Cooper. We were thinking about playing like Roblox, and just doing like an AMA while we were playing, and we thought that Roblox would be fun because you guys could join as well.
Yeah, and I was also gonna do magic story time, right? I posted a poll a few days ago where I asked what magic story you guys wanted to hear from me. And actually the Saturn fraud / debt working was the one that won. So I guess that's the story I'm gonna tell.
Wait, sorry, which story?
The story about how I used Saturn magic to negate a $10,000 debt.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a chill episode. We thought that it'd be good just to have another episode with the three of us where it's a little bit light and we can just kind of shoot the shit, you know. So yeah, definitely join for that episode.
Yeah, it's June 19th.
It'll be like basically like the solstice episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Let's see if he's blocked me yet. I bet you he kept listening after we
Well, he's left the
had
chat.
this. Yeah, let me see if he blocked me yet.
Roblox, I think it's just something that it's just like an online computer game. I don't think you have to purchase it. Or maybe it is. You know what, guys, don't quote me on that.
So he unfollowed me, but he didn't block me.
Because he's
Right. Well, I'm going to block him
too high and mighty to block.
because he's a fucking cunt. God, what a fucking loser.
Well, I'm to head out. I'm starving. Need to eat something. But are you gonna stay on?
I don't know. Did I?
You can call Cooper.
Should we call Cooper? Let's see if he answers. I'll call him on my cell phone.
No,
Are we unmuted?
yes.
Okay. I want to give Cooper the opportunity to talk shit about this guy before we go up. Yeah. I'm ringing him.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail. The person you're trying to reach is not available. At the tone, please record your message.
I'm texting him.
All right. Well, I'm gonna head out. It was great seeing everyone. And we'll have a much better episode in a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm hungry too, user of gold. I'm gonna go. Bye.
All right. Hey, if you can find that artichoke liqueur out there, it's me. Thank you. Yeah. So the liqueur I can't find. If anyone is curious, this shit is actually fucking awesome. So you guys should do this. It's called Chinar, right? This shit is fucking legit. So it is liqueur made out of artichokes. It's fucking awesome, right? You put this in a glass with some ice and some soda water or some Coca-Cola, or even just drink it straight. It's fucking so good. Yeah, this shit is awesome, right? You guys should really try this. Yeah, yeah. And this is it was sitting out on the fucking thing, but Hope put it somewhere. Right? Ever since she's moved in, I can't find anything. I have to ask her where everything is. Because she's squirreled it away. Now, that's because I am a disorganized slob, right? And don't put anything in its proper place and just try and remember where the last place I was that I used it. And so a lot of times, it hasn't changed much. I still end up looking around for everything. The only difference is that now that Hope has moved it, I have no hope of possibly remembering where I last placed it, because it wasn't where I last placed it, because she's put it somewhere else. You're saying it sounds disgusting. Actually, the artichoke liqueur is fucking so tasty. It is so good. It is so good. It is awesome. It's very good. Like, trust me, just try it. All right, I guess I should stop. I don't know, man. This episode has bummed me the fuck out, and I don't know. I'm just gonna go fucking get high in the attic. I'm just gonna go fucking take ketamine or something and space the fuck out, because this shit is fucking a come down. This is such a letdown, bro. I mean, I said, so you should drink it, either put soda water in it or put Coca-Cola in it. I've even put orange juice in it, and I personally like that, but I think other people would think it was disgusting. But I like disgusting, acidic. If things are very acidic or very bitter, I really like those tastes. You're asking me to reply to your DMs. Look, my DMs are a fucking mess, okay? They're so bad. You know how many people message me all the time? I really try. I do make my best effort to reply to all of you guys. It's just too many. It's just too many. But I will try and take a look at your messages. Amaretto is okay. It's a little sweet. All right. So my thing about machine consciousness is that I really think that, like, you can. So I have gotten my electronic devices to perform functions that they're not supposed to be able to perform, right? So one of the things, my old cell phone, right, is, I called my magic cell phone. I enchanted it, right? And I enchanted it to be a spy, a sentry, right? And so if there's anyone that's ever talking shit about me or trying to get me, doing magic against me or something else like this, then it will display, when I open the astrology app on my phone, it will display that person's chart. It also has displayed, just randomly gone to someone's profile before without me clicking on it, right? And so the glitches in the machine, so basically, I didn't program anything into the machine, right? I didn't write any code. I didn't install any program on it. I did a magic ritual to enchant the phone. And now the phone gives me the information I want through errors, right? So errors occur. And this is actually something that Tsotchke was talking about. To give credit to him for one of the few things he did say that did make sense, is that a lot of times the error in the system can show you The error can be the actual result, right? So this is the, like the truth and the lie. The truth and the lie are the same thing. All right. A lot of people have dropped out. I've been seeing the numbers of people tuned in dwindling, probably because it's just me ranting. We've been going for almost 3 hours. I should probably stop. But, oh my God. I had a bad feeling about this episode. I did not want to do it. I was telling Hope, I was like, oh my God, this is going to suck. I don't know. I've also just been in a bad mood all day, and I've just wanted to be away from everyone. I feel so oversaturated with human contact. I just want to be by myself and not speak to anyone and just get high and sit by myself and not speak to anyone and listen to Morrissey and be like, that's what I've wanted to do all day, and I haven't got to do it. So maybe I should just end the stream and go upstairs and do that, because I don't know. I clearly didn't get what I wanted out of this. Oh my God, guys. All right. I'm going to stay on here until it hits 3 hours. So that's 10 and a half minutes. What do you want to, oh, awesome. Maybe I will be on longer now that I hope it's given me this. This is the artichoke liqueur I was talking about. Yeah, this shit is fucking dope. All right, guys. Bump on my question about any Rex. I did not see the question about Rex. What's the question? Can you please repeat it? All right, I will play Morrissey. I will play Morrissey.
I was a good kid. I wouldn't do you no harm.
What's the Rex? What were you asking? Oh,
with a
Rex
nice
for reading.
paper round.
I'm close. Repeating death.
Forgive me any pain I may have brought to you. With God's help, I know.
I mean,
I'll always be near to you.
the Felix do a different.
But Jesus hurt me when he deserted me. But I have forgiven Jesus for all the.
You couldn't hear me. All right, so I'm saying a Veden Janum, right? Here. Can you hear me now? So I'm putting his name on the screen. Type this into Twitter and go to him. If this is if that's who you want. If you want a reading with someone other than me, go to him. Now, if you want someone else, then I would also recommend my good friend Wet Neptune, Sarah. Go to her. All right. I would especially recommend her for any kind of intuitive tarot, psychic type of reading that you would want, Sarah is very good. She's incredible. She's a very, very good channel. She is the type of person that could have the wrong chart and still read it correctly. She's great. So yeah, Wet Neptune and Venus Janum, those are the people I'm recommending to go for a reading while I'm closed. I'm trying to think who else I would recommend. Oh, also, Marcos Monteiro. I'll put his name on the screen. I believe I'm spelling that right. I hope I am. Let me double check. He does a very good job. He gave me for free a detailed year-long reading with every lunar return for the year. Yeah. I spelled it wrong. So it's Marcos Monteiro. All right, this guy. So, Venus Janum, Wet Neptune, Marcos Monteiro. Those are my 3 recommendations for people you should go to for astrology readings while I am closed. Everyone's been asking me when I'm gonna open my books, and honestly, it's very hard. When I do readings, I should charge more because I do a whole magic ritual for every reading. I try and connect with that person's spirits and their guides and stuff. And I take time to like look at their chart and use it as a mandala for meditation. And I just haven't been able to. I need to be alone, right? And the last several months have just been so much shit going on, and Hope moved in, and things have been going on in my personal life, and things have just been getting so much busier that I got to the point where I was sacrificing the prep time that I needed to do in order to do the readings. And I started to feel like I wasn't giving. I started to feel like the readings I was giving were more like the readings I would give if you met me at a bar and I was in the mood to read your chart. And I didn't want it to be like that. I want it to be good. Like if I'm gonna offer something and take money for it, I want it to be the best I can possibly do. And I've just felt like where I am in my life right now, with everything that's going on, I've just not been in the position to be able to do the best possible thing and devote the amount of time that I'm accustomed to devoting to it. And so that's why I'm not offering the readings. I mean, they will come back eventually, but probably in a much more abbreviated form. I mean, also the thing is that like, here's this trick with me, is that if it's late at night, East Coast time, and you get an intuition about me, message me, and I'll probably read your chart for free in the Twitter DMs. All right? I was doing that earlier today with a follower of mine. I was reading her chart for free off the cuff. Right? Now, it's not going to be the full treatment that you'd get, but I will still do it. I'll do it for my own amusement, just to keep sharp. But that's what you got to do, is you got to like tune into me psychically, right? Which you can if you're sensitive, because I have an open door policy. So you can tune into me. And what you need to do is you need to find when I'm up late, alone, and getting high. And then you message me and I'll fucking read your chart. Yeah. Late night East Coast time. Yeah. Late night East Coast time. How to find strength when your whole life crumbles. Okay, so the thing is that when you have those moments where everything collapses, it's actually one of the most life-affirming times. So here's a personal story about me, right? So it was back in 2018, right? So in 2009, I was initiated into the occult. And by 2018, I was so sick of this shit. I was like, fuck astrology, fuck magic, fuck God, fuck spirits, fuck all of this shit. And I decided I was going to just do what I wanted and not pay attention. And I ended up getting engaged to be married. And I did it all without consulting any charts, anything like that. And then once we moved in together and everything started falling apart, then I looked at like the synastry and I looked at like looked at my timing stuff and looked forward. And I saw that 3 years later, I was going to get divorced. And I had just gotten married. Right? And so I had this prediction that I was going to get divorced for 3 years. It's kind of hanging there. And to me, this was like, all right, if I'm right about this, then I can't argue anymore. I can't say this shit's not real. And what ended up happening was because in the astrology chart I saw another person, like a love triangle type situation going on, right? And so I knew that my spouse was going to cheat on me, but I didn't know who with or what. So I kept trying to, I started spying to see if I could find out, because I knew something was going to happen. But I didn't find out. I was fucking checking the phone, looking at everything, spying like a fucking asshole, spying so much, right? Like invading, absolutely invasive shit. Waiting till they're asleep, going through their shit, could not find anything until the fucking week I had predicted. Then I find it. He forgot to delete the messages. This was the moment for me where I was like, everything, like, because I didn't like this shit. I don't like all of this. Like, I would prefer that none of this occult shit was real. This is where me and Cooper are different. Cooper loves magic. I fucking hate it. I love it, but I hate it too. And if I could, I would fucking get rid of it. Honestly, I would. And, just seeing this play out over 3 years and being helpless to do anything about it. And then when I finally found out everything, I remember I found out that my spouse had been cheating on me for 18 months and hiding it. 18 months. But I knew 3 years. Right? So I knew twice as long as he'd actually been that it was going to happen. And I remember when I found out, I was fucking drunk as shit. Looking up at the stars, crying and laughing at the same time, and feeling this pain and this ecstasy at once. This cruelty and this enlightenment and then rapture at the same time. And so what I would say to you is if you feel like your life is crumbling, if you feel like everything is falling apart, if you feel like everything you invested in, if you feel like you're wrong, if you feel like you've made a mistake, if you feel humiliated, if you feel like you're doing something bad, then just try to see the beauty in it. Try to see the humor in it. Try to laugh at yourself. And if you can do that, then you'll make it. You really will. Because that's what, the thing is that you said, aren't you manifesting it to happen by doing that? No. Because I was actively doing magic the whole time to try and fix the relationship and get us to open up to each other and be able to talk. But we couldn't ever even talk on the level. So all of my manifestation powers were going against trying to prove astrology wrong. I was trying to use a magic to, whatever. My point is that if you feel like your life is crumbling and everything is falling apart, just try to see the humor in it. And that will save you. Try and see the humor in it. Let me look at some of the comments while I was... So if you flip the Jupiter talisman and it falls down on a certain face, is that answer accurate? So with the Jupiter coin, so I have them here. So here's the thing that you have to do. So I explained this in the rules on the post and on my website, but what you have to do is you have to flip it. And you have to see it. So that would be a bad flip. So you have to flip it and catch it perfectly. Then put it on your hand, and it has to stay on your hand. If it slides off, it's invalid. So you go like this, flip it, catch it, put it on like that. If it doesn't do that, then the flip is invalid, and you have to do it again, right? That's how it works. Flip it, catch it, put it on your hand like that. All right. So what did we say? You have to do it when you're alone, and you can only ask Max 13 times on the same topic. Yeah, so the thing about the 13 questions is that if it's a single thread of conversation, you're limited to 12 follow-up questions to your initial question. That's a good thing to know. Let me get rid of this fucking shit. I was asking my BF if I passed my exam, and it fell on the yes side on his chest next to the Jupiter talisman he was wearing. That's how I signed it. I mean, honestly, you could probably reprogram the talisman to work differently. So also, once you start, like, so you see how on mine, there was like engraving on the magic square side. Like I've engraved a sigil on top of the magic square. Once you do that part, you can reprogram it to function how you want if you're good enough with magic. But yeah, my talismans are made to be reprogrammable, right? You can reprogram them. Nice, sorry, yeah. Engraving your initials, it's good. So if you can, and once you've passed that point, you should be able to program it. And it will be, because it's a more personal relationship with it then, right? So then it should respond to you. And so initially it's my programming that goes into it. But once you carve your sigil or your initials on the back, then it becomes yours and it will function how you want. Now, the thing about, being good at magic is a lot of it is what I was saying with Tsotchke that it eventually triggered him, which was like, if that might makes right in terms of reality, and that if you believe harder than someone else, then you win, right? And he objected to this, but it's absolutely true. And you can see this, right? So next time you get into a confrontation with someone, or well, basically, have you ever tried to bully somebody? Right? Just the fact that you can bully other people into submission proves my point, in my opinion. Right? The very fact that you can bully other people into submission proves my point that he who believes hardest wins. And that really all that is required to get other people to do what you want is to believe harder than they do. And that's it. That's really it. And I know that this is a kind of fascistic model of reality, but that is what I believe. And I don't care if it's fascistic. Let's see. Okay, guys. I've stayed on here past when I said I would. I kind of don't want to leave, though. What else? One thing I will say is that, like, the thing that I don't understand is that the more I talk about how good I am at magic and mind fucking other people, the more people want to try me. I really don't get that. It really doesn't make sense to me. The thing with Cooper, like, the reason why we're friends is because I was like, oh shit. I'd rather be your friend than your enemy. Says, with Jupiter and Cancer being my 8th house, is there anything I should know about the talisman's activation in that house of my chart? I mean, it being in the 8th will be good for, like, occult stuff. In order to know, I mean, so I use I'm kind of of the influence of the Vedic astrology, where I use derivative houses from the moon sign primarily. Right, so when you show me your chart and it says Aries rising, I don't fucking treat you as Aries rising. I treat you as whatever your moon sign is. The moon sign is the most important. Moon sign is always the most important. So, sorry, Bari says, I've noticed my presence in people's lives forces them to transform nowadays. Yeah, so you're becoming a catalyst. That's kind of what I am, right? As a catalyst, where engaging with your energy forces transformation, right? It's called being a catalyst. And, if you connect to, like, the psychic grid I've been talking about with the dreams and stuff, that will teach you to be a catalyst. I'm worried Cooper will be mad at you guys for continuing the show after he left. I mean, Cooper is, well, oh, he replied to me. Let's see what he says. Okay. I told him that people want your rants, and he says, I don't want to rant. I'm working in the garage. I don't want to fight with people, and I don't want to be made into an asshole who needs to rant about a goofy little prick. The whole I'm not arguing while actively presenting arguments and strawmanning is nuts. I'm good. All right. It says, what does it mean that the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in Cancer were exactly trying my lot of fortune in Pisces 7th house? Probably nothing. How do you know if you're actually astral projecting or just imagining things? Well, if you can verify it. But you'll get a feel for it after. Right? You get a feel for it after. It's that's tricky. I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I mean, I can tell the difference. It's more like if you know that you haven't put any expectation and you're just open, you'll be able to do it. I'm gonna bump the question on why the moon sign is the most important. I mean, the moon sign is the most important because that's what the fucking piranhas say. I don't know. I mean, the one religion I don't shit talk is Hinduism because they actually fucking knew some shit. I mean, I should tell you, have I ever said anything bad about Hinduism? No. That's like the one religion I've never shit talked and won't shit talk. Because Hinduism proved to me that it's real. Because I used their mantras, their spiritual technology without believing in the gods. And it works in my life, and I see it. The Hindu gods are fucking real. Way more real than the other ones, in my opinion. The other ones are real too, but, you know, I mean, the Vedics, the Hindus, they fucking knew some shit, okay? That's all I'll say. Oh, shit. Okay, so, all right, you guys would think this is funny. So the last sentence in Cooper's message was, he says, the whole "I'm not arguing while actively presenting arguments and strawmanning is nuts. I'm good. Go fuck your waifu doll." Now I thought he meant me, like go fuck my waifu doll. But it's just like, I was like, okay, last sentence is a bit harsh, lol. And he says, "Oh, I didn't mean you. I meant you as in him. His whole page is nothing but waifus." I would never talk about Hope in that way. I didn't think about that implication how I said that. But I meant that fuckface who was using said argument style, not you. Sorry for that clumsiness. That was very funny. Because I was like, oh shit, did I do something to piss him off? He's telling me to go fuck Hope like she's a waifu doll. I was like, oh my god, dude, I didn't. Yeah, but that's great. Okay, so all right, let me see the other comments. I think my earphones just died. Oh well. And the thing is, I mean, the thing about, I mean, so the pagan gods are real too. I mean, I invoke them, but I mean, the Hindu gods have been able to produce so much more powerful distortions in reality for me. I mean, Rahu is fucking so awesome. I love Rahu. Rahu magic. Dude. So there's a reason why Rahu is considered the lord of black magic. I have Rahu in the 4th house, by the way, the house associated with black magic. Rahu's fucking legit. Rahu is so much more powerful than any of the other ones. So much more. It's insane. It's actually fucking insane how powerful Rahu is. You guys do not even know how fucking Rahu is more powerful than all the grahas. Any of the planets, Rahu is better. Rahu is more powerful. Yes, it's gross. He's a hentai bro. Yeah, apparently he has this thing. His chat, but that Tsotchke guy, his chat bot is called Tsotchke-chan, and it's some anime girl waifu shit. Sorry, says, I have permanent shrines to the 7 planets, but not the nodes. I do too. I don't have any shrines to the nodes. I don't think you need to. The nodes are what makes up this reality, right? The nodes are in everything. The nodes are like so the way I can describe the nodes is that the nodes are at once the peasant and the king. They're at once the atom and the molecule, right? They are the miniature and the maximum at once, right? That's what the nodes are. The nodes are the microcosm and macrocosm together. Someone asked, what degree is my Rahu? My Rahu is at 9 degrees Aquarius. 9 degrees Aquarius. She says, is this what the astral classes are like? So the astral classes are... So you get to, when you visit me in the astral, you get like the better version of me, right? So basically I'm like, you get to interact with my higher dimensional self. right? Who I've basically given control. So I basically, I shouldn't talk about this publicly. Fuck this shit. You guys don't deserve it. But yeah. Come to the astral school. We'll teach you. And the great thing about the astral lessons is that you don't have to remember your dreams. You don't have to remember any of this. Basically, once you start having dreams about me and Hope, she's almost always in them now with other people. And Max, too, if you know him, Megaton, Nematon. So basically, if you have dreams about us and we teach you stuff, you won't be able to remember it when you wake up, but that doesn't matter. Because when you need to know the information, it will come to you as an intuitive download, right? So let's say we've taught you how to do something magically in the astral. You won't remember it until the time comes that you need to. At which point, the thought will come to you fully formed, and it will be different than your normal thoughts. It will come to you complete, like a download. It will just appear. And that's how you know that it's not just you thinking this and imagining it, it's coming from somewhere else. And this is because the astral body is what stores memories. And when you connect with me in astral, the first thing I do is teach you how to create an astral black book, right? So magicians normally have a black book, a journal, magic diary, where they record all their spells. Now, I don't do this because your book of shadows is a vulnerability, right? And if it is written down in the material realm, that means someone else can remote view it. So the reason why they say you should have a book of shadows is to prevent you forgetting stuff and going insane. Now, I've disregarded that because I would rather be totally secret and record everything in the astral book of shadows. And I trust in that. And I trusted that it will keep track and it will let me know. And I've remembered many things that I've forgotten at exactly the right moment. All right? And if you do this, I don't recommend that anyone else do this, right? This is just like how I, will do extreme things and take drugs that you should never recommend to somebody else, drugs that are very harmful and bad. But I'll do it anyway. Right? So what I'm telling you is that once you connect with me in the astral, then I will teach you how to create your own astral book of shadows. And this astral book of shadows will record all of the memories of your dreams. And when you need to know the information, it comes to you as though it is a spontaneous thought. But if you pay attention, you will perceive it coming down in through your crown chakra. Whereas intuitions that are not astral in origin often come from the heart or the solar plexus chakra. And so if you get a crown chakra intuition, that means that you are getting updated on shit you already know. So this astral book of shadows is basically what separates like the pretenders from the real magicians, right? And a lot of real magicians, they'll have a physical book of shadows too, but the astral book is what counts. And I don't keep a physical book. I don't, because I don't trust it. I think if you write it down, then other people can see it. And if you don't, then it's secret. And I am the most secretive person you can possibly fucking imagine. So, yeah, I basically once you have a dream of me, then you'll get this astral book of shadows, and then you just need to start trusting when the downloads come from the crown chakra. That's how you know that they're coming from the astral and not from within. Right? So now I'm not saying you can't trust the intuitions that come from the crown chakra or the heart chakra and the solar plexus chakra. You still can trust those. But the thing is that the ones from the crown chakra will be more specific, and they will oftentimes include words that you don't even know and you have to look up. All right, so I've been talking for a while and I haven't looked at the chat. So let's see. Maybe it could be a regular dream, but it might actually be, I mean, the astral dreams, the way you can tell them is if they are vivid, right? And also, I'll look different. So I will have this blue aura around me, and my eyes will appear vacant, and I will appear like I am not really there, and I will appear like I'm being remote controlled. If you have dreams like that of me, then that's definitely an astral dream. If you can't remember meeting you, then how will we know if we've already been training with you? So you will, I mean, you'll be able to remember having a dream, but you won't remember the specifics of what you're taught, right? Sorry, Bar says, hold up, you had that. Did you and Hope go to Trinidad in the Astrals? I mean, I don't think so, but I do kind of have so my oldest friend in the world is from Trinidad Tobago. He's, you know, he just looks like a normal black guy. He looks like African American, talks like them, but he's from Trinidad. He's my oldest friend in the fucking world. And I do feel a connection, I guess, through him. I don't know if I've ever gone there, but I do know that I have an affinity for I've visited other tropical islands near Trinidad. I've been to the Virgin Islands. I've been to other islands in the Caribbean. And my oldest friend in the world is from there. So I don't know. That's my connection to Trinidad. And shout out, you know who you are, Kevin. You're not watching this. He's so cool. He will he's like I mean, he's into this occult shit too, but he's like, it's different. All right, guys. I'm gonna go. I said in my dream, you guys were in Trinidad on the beach. That's cool. That's very cool. Where'd the coin go? All right. I'm gonna go. I've been on here way longer than I thought. This has been a 3.5-hour stream. God, that was so fucking disappointing, man. I can't believe it. I'm gonna go fuck my head. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys for sticking with me through this. I've been considering doing some solo streams. Maybe if I feel up to it next Friday, I'll do a solo stream where I just read charts because I need to keep up with reading charts, and I need practice. So I might try and do one next week where it's just me. I've never done one, just me alone, but I might do it. Rosetta, dude, it broke down into I mean, it ended up, I used the, I ended up describing our guest with multiple homophobic slurs, right? That's where the stream ended up, was me calling the guest a faggot, right? So, spoiler. Yeah. Okay, guys. I'm gonna go, but see y'all later. Thank you for tuning in. Love you guys. Thanks for all the support. I'll see you in the dream world. And yeah. Also, there's find the sigil. There's a specific sigil on my website. And if you find it and you draw it on a piece of paper and you put it under your pillow, you're definitely going to have astral dreams about me. So find it. That's my challenge to all of you guys. Because this shit goes way beyond astrology, way beyond all this stuff. It's, people don't know how fucking deep this shit goes. It's so much more radical than you can think. And perception really does equal reality. Someone says, is it the bunny? No, but the bunny is another port. The bunny will get you there too. So the bunnies, the triskelion bunnies does get you there, but there's a more direct route. There's more a direct route. All right, guys. All right. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah. Also, just my last thing that I will say about Jin the Ninja and that beef is that that guy has got like the least amount of magic power of any of my ops that's ever stepped into me. Like even Max, even Astro by Max, that like 22-year-old gay woke convert to Islam, even he put up a better fight than Jin the Ninja, right? Which is who Tsotchke's fucking butt buddy is, apparently. So, you know, I'm just putting that out there. Jin the Ninja is a pussy. Fuck him. I guess with that, I don't know what else to say. I don't really want to end the show on that note, though. I want to end the show on a better note. I want to end it on saying that, like, you're not constrained by the limitations that other people tell you. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Their wildest dreams can come true. My wildest dreams have come true. You know, I've been able to observe physical changes in material reality, right? There is no limit. And you should not never give up, never despair, never kill yourself. We are stronger. All right, guys. I think that's about all I got. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.